Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Negative Alpha Bravo. And this is 7 November Golf, Roger. Request you check your Romeo side. I'll go ahead and check my Tango side. 7 November Golf out. November 8-5, and 8-5, 7 November, say again. 7 November, go. I copied a while ago, 1 Charlie transmission that my can use November, go. 1 Charlie, and 8-5, this is 7 November, Charlie. Now 1 Charlie, 7 November, go.
This is 1 Charlie, reference to your last, you're Brandon 158, extra box, 1200 between teams, and local. Also request your unit take extra method to see if we can try to get Whiskey 9 and 8 for pause to the playground.
And this is 7 November, Roger, stand by.
Got that.
Got it? Alright. And all units, this is 7 November Golf. My unit Alpha, Echo, X-ray Alpha Alpha in there.
One Charlie, Alpha Bravo.
Hey, I never took a dip. I forgot to take a dip.
Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Whiskey 9 Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Whiskey 9 Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Negative Alpha Bravo. And this is 7 November Golf, Roger. Request you check your Romeo side. I'll go ahead and check my Tango side. 7 November Golf out. November 8-5, and 8-5, 7 November, say again. 7 November, go.
Hey, thanks for making it to the live event here with Daniel Gade. Thank you for making it. Before we jump into it, though, regardless of where you are watching from, whether it's Veterans Info Tap, Veterans Daily, or the Civ Div, if you're not subscribed, please do that. It really does help to support the channels, and we really do appreciate your support very much. For many of you out there, you may be wondering what is going on and why are we doing this live. You're going to find out. We're going to have some really deep dive conversation here. And before we jump into it, though, I want to pass it over to Clay, do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we will do introductions and get rolling on this live. Thank you guys so very much for making it. We appreciate you. Clay.
Yeah, so at the request of Daniel Gade here, who will introduce himself in a second, we've decided that any profit from super chats and all this stuff here is going to go to an organization called TAPS. You can look them up at taps.org. And so all these super chats here will go directly there. So if you have something you want to say or a question you want asked, we ask that you donate. It'll go directly to TAPS, any profits from that. And then if there is a question like this one here from NYCCYN, we will eventually get to it as we have like a natural flow. So first off, I just want to thank everyone who joined as a member. Welcome to the team on either channel, right? NYCCYN. Thank you very much, George ×2 American Vet. Thank you. And then we have Charlie T with the $20 donation there. And then we have a few more. They're going to be rolling in. So Daniel, go ahead and just take it from here. Introduce yourself. And we're probably just going to jump straight into this thing. You know, there's sometimes you just, through the ambush, you just fight through the X. So what you got?
Yeah, that's perfect. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Veterans Day to all my fellow veterans, including my Marine Corps partners here. Happy birthday to the Marines yesterday. 250 years is a long time. And I think the Army beat you by about 4 months. So we barely scraped it in. The Army does a terrible job of celebrating its birthday. So I guess we all have to celebrate the Marine Corps birthday instead. So anyway, happy birthday to you guys. So I'm really excited about this. You know, when Clay, I made a LinkedIn post about the Senate testimony that was on the 30th of October, and Clay jumped in there. I'd never heard of him. I'd never heard of these channels, and he had some things to say that were a little tiny bit spicy. And I said, hey Clay, DM me and let's do a live stream and let's talk about it. You know, let's unpack it, because in the Senate hearing you get like 5 minutes, and then you get like 1 or 2 questions, and that's kind of it. So there was no real opportunity to kind of unpack some of this. And there were some, I'd say, misconceptions that came out of that testimony that I would love to talk about. And there's some things that there's a whole lot that I think that we agree on, the three of us. And then more broadly, I think the veteran community can agree on a number of principles. The principles that I think we ought to agree on is that veterans should be proud of their service, that the country should do what it can to help veterans thrive after service. And the reason for that is not just because of the veteran, him or herself, but and their families, of course, but also because of the national security imperative to have military service be something that is desirable for future generations. And how veterans are doing in society will drive whether our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews are willing to put the uniform on. So I think that's really important. I'm also wanting to give a tiny bit of background about myself, just briefly. So I enlisted in the Army as a private in 1992. I was in the Army Reserve for like a year. And then I got selected. I applied and got into West Point. So I went off to West Point and graduated from there in 97 and was commissioned as an armor officer and did regular armor officer stuff. One little notable thing that I did that was kind of bizarre as I think back to it was I actually started Ranger School on September 10th, 2001. So when the towers came down, we thought it was like part of the scenario. You know, we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to go in the woods and kill terrorists. And obviously it wasn't part of any scenario. But anyway, so I at the time I had orders to go to Korea. And so I went to Korea as a captain and got there in like December of 01 and served there for 2.5 years. I was non-command sponsored, so I was unaccompanied technically, but my wife came over and lived on the economy, and our first child was born in Korea. And then I had orders to grad school. The Army sends people to grad school who've been selected to teach at West Point. So I had orders to grad school, but my boss and his boss came to me in the mess hall and they said, hey, Daniel, this is not a loyalty test, but we're sending your company, your tank company. I was the commander of the tank company. They said, we're sending your tank company to Iraq, and it's up to you whether you want to go with them or go on to grad school. And I quoted Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1. I said, here am I, Lord, send me. And so they did. So August of 2004, I end up in Kuwait. And then around the 1st of September, late August, early September, I don't remember the exact date, we convoyed into a place called Ramadi, Iraq, west of Baghdad. If you're in Virginia and you see a black Ram truck with a Ramadi license plate, 2 Purple Hearts on it, that's my truck. So give me a wave. Try not to, you could wave your middle finger to us, I suppose that's okay. I'll probably just think it was my driving and not my license plate. But anyway, I was wounded in combat twice. The first time was 21 years ago yesterday when a awesome soldier named Dennis Miller was killed in action when an RPG hit our tank, and it hit him directly in the face and killed him instantly. And I got a little bit of shrapnel down through the loader's hatch and into the commander's hatch where I was sitting, or where I was standing actually. But I was returned to duty. It was mild wounds for me, although catastrophic for Dennis, and a real tragedy for his family. I think they found out on Veterans Day that he'd been killed. So I continued to command my company and do the things I had to do. And then on January 10th, 2005, I was hit by an IED, a roadside bomb, and woke up on my back in the ditch. And the Marines in the chat and my my Marine buddies there on the chat will appreciate this, but when I was in the surgical station, I ran them out of A-positive blood. They gave me all the blood they had, and it wasn't enough. So they went to the mess hall, and this was a Marine and Navy base camp called Al Taqaddum. And they went to this base camp, and they said, "Hey, if you have A-positive blood, we could use your help." And 25 sailors and Marines who I didn't know got up from their dinner and came over and donated their fresh hot blood into bags to the IV pole into my body. And I think that's been that story has been a real source of inspiration for me, because I think as a society, when we come together and do hard things, that's when we can all thrive. And nobody cared that I wasn't a Marine, that nobody asked if I was straight or gay or black or white or a Marine or a soldier or whatever. They just knew I was an American and they wanted to save me. And I think that's where, to me, that's really been a source of inspiration. But I was badly wounded. I ended up, my whole abdomen was blown open. I could see my guts actually, which was not cool. And, but I ended up a week later when I was unconscious at Walter Reed. By that point, I ended up having my right leg amputated at the hip because my wounds were too severe for the leg to be able to survive. So they ended up taking it off. And I was an inpatient in the hospital for like 6 months. And then I became an outpatient in the hospital. And that's kind of when, and to bring it back to the purpose of this meeting, that's kind of when I began to notice some things that I thought were kind of deeply dysfunctional. And that was that a lot of my fellow wounded warriors, guys typically at Walter Reed at that time, as guys missing limbs, head injuries and burns went elsewhere. Head injuries went to the old Bethesda and burns typically went to San Antonio. So it's like amputees and other orthopedic injuries like mine. And something that I saw was a lot of organizations coming, and instead of talking about employment and thriving and all of this, they were talking about how can we get your disability rating as high as possible. And I just thought, man, I don't know if that's a good goal. I don't know if I can organize my life around the disability identity. And so I chose not to. I decided, you know what, I'm not done serving. I had a boss come to me in the hospital and he said, "Hey, Dan, are you done serving?" And I said, "Sure, I think so." And then he's like, "But why?" And so when we had that conversation, I just decided that I was going to continue to serve. But I had to do things differently because I, at that point, only had, and still to this day, only have one leg. So I ended up going to, the Army sent me to get a master's degree at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. And so I went to the UGA to get a master's in public administration. And then in the summer of 2007, there was a famous, I think we're going to come back to the Washington Post, but there was a famous expose by the Washington Post that's sort of colloquially known as the Walter Reed scandal. And a whole bunch of Army, leadership at Walter Reed and elsewhere lost their jobs because of some mismanaged care for wounded, ill, and injured soldiers mostly. And so the White House called me one day, and it's a crazy story, but the White House called me and said, "Hey, can you come and be our veterans policy guy?" And I said, "Absolutely." So from summer of 07 to summer of 08, while I was still a major on active duty, I was on the White House Domestic Policy Council. And so I went from having this sort of user level experience of wounded warriors to being like at the very highest level. Like I could look out my window in the executive office building and see the West Wing. It was crazy and totally disorienting. But I saw some things there in my time that I thought were kind of dysfunctional. And I've quoted this many times before, but there was a Dole Shalala commission that had all these efforts to try to make wounded warrior care more streamlined, to include a quality of life component instead of just an earnings loss component and some other of that stuff. But the DAV the Wounded Warrior Project was for it, and DAV was opposed to it. And the reason they were opposed to it was because there was going to be some changes to certain kind of conditions, like we're seeing now, like sleep apnea and just junk like that was going to come off, and they were going to really double down on quality of life related compensation to include it being potentially kind of sizable. And the DAV was opposed, and the director of DAV, the big boss of DAV, came and said, if one veteran loses $1, DAV will be opposed. And I was like, wow, that's so strange. So fast forwarding, I know we need to get to questions and all that. So fast forwarding, I go and get my PhD in this, and my dissertation was actually on the VA claims process and the attitude of raters towards claimants and whether the veteran status of the rater affected their view of claimants. It was very interesting. Probably not super relevant to this, but it was a dissertation on the disability system. So I ended up earning my PhD, and then I went to West Point as a professor and was there from summer of 11 to spring of 17 is when I retired from the Army as a lieutenant colonel. I got to do a really cool employment experiment where we incentivized veterans who had 30 to 90% disabilities to get jobs, and we gave them certain incentives, and then we monitored them relative to a control group. And we discovered that those with jobs did much better financially, socially, maritally, and their mental and physical health were all better. And so the light kind of came on to me that the best way to take care of veterans is through jobs. Like jobs, there's research papers and all this stuff, but jobs are powerful medicine. And so for me, I became really focused on this job issue, and remain then and now remain pretty skeptical of a lot of parts of the disability system, because the way that incentives are structured, people respond to incentives. And I believe that if we pay veterans to be sick, we get more sick veterans. If we pay veterans to be well and healthy, if we help them thrive, then we're going to get people who are thriving.
Right.
And that's super high level. And I'll just come back. I know I've kind of gone. I wanted to.
Yeah. So that's a hell of an introduction. Thank you for the introduction, Daniel. We appreciate it. So one thing that you did say that is just interesting to me is you were injured twice. Horrible. And really the second time, the first time was bad because you lost somebody.
The other guy got killed. Yeah.
And so that's horrible in that way. Then the second time is you lose a leg, which is never fun. So you were able to stay in the military and then subsequently retire out. How many years did you do after the incident where you lost your leg?
Yeah. So I got wounded January 10th, 2005, and I retired from the Army. My retirement ceremony was on January 10th, 2017, and my official retirement date was May 1st or something. So all in, if you count West Point, you count my little reserve time and stuff like that, like 25 years.
Right. So, it's how many years did you have in when you lost your leg?
Like 8 commissioned years, or 7.5 commissioned years.
Yeah.
I was a captain. I turned 30 in the hospital, so I was 29 and a captain when I got hurt.
Got it. So, I mean, man, if you would have ended up getting pushed out and medically retired at that point, we'd probably have a whole different conversation today, probably about the Major Richard Starr Act and how that is a horrific situation for many medically retired folks out there. And I know that this isn't the topic that we're talking about, but just because of your circumstances and just the flip of a switch, one thing blows a different way, could have changed your whole trajectory. And, I get that a lot of it's between the ears, right? I mean, it's mindset, it's positive attitude, it's lean forward, it's don't look back, it's what can I do, all of that. But I would just a brief, I'm talking like a minute. I would love to know your thoughts on the Major Richard Starr Act, and then we'll kick it to Clay because he's got some questions and we'll go from there. But what's your thoughts on Major Richard Starr Act?
So I actually haven't been tracking it. Is that the one that will take people who are retired due to disability and give them joint disability retirement and
eliminate the offset? Yeah, currently there's an offset.
Okay.
So if your retirement's $3,000 and your VA disability is $3,000, you don't get $6, you get $3. It's tax free at that point.
Yeah. So disability compensation and retirement are for different purposes. And I've always said that, like, it doesn't matter how much money I make. It doesn't matter how, I could win the lottery tomorrow or whatever. My leg isn't growing back. That's a disability that lives forever. And so, I haven't seen the legislation the way it's written, and I'd be careful about incentives and all that stuff. But to me, that seems pretty obvious, and it seems like it's correcting something that ought to have been corrected a long time ago.
I agree with you. I would love for you to look into it in all of your free time. And just champion it where you can, because it is absolutely it's something that absolutely needs to be corrected. And as you read through it, it's crystal clear. It's just that you know how it is on the Hill, where if you don't have the money to pay for it from somewhere else, well, people don't like to tend to pay for things unless it's coming from somewhere else, which is kind of your point with a lot of this VA stuff. Clay, I know you have been ultra patient for 20 minutes, and I know that's hard for you. I saw your foot tapping the whole time. So I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Yeah, I'm just going to dive into some statements you made during your testimony. These are paraphrased, not quoted. And there's some things that you said that I completely disagree with. And Perfect. I think the framework, like how people approach a situation, can absolutely frame their thought process and decision-making process on how they view a problem, right? And so you during your testimony, you stated that VSOs, your accredited service officers, are trying to help veterans exaggerate their symptoms for a high VA rating. Paraphrase, right? First off, can you explain that? Okay, because I understand opening statement. You have 5 minutes. You're rushing through it. I got it. Can you explain that? And then right after that statement, you also talked about it was VSOs coupled with VA claim companies and how they're both convincing veterans to exaggerate symptoms. I think you have an argument for one, but not the other. So if we can start there as a good basis, because that's everyone's first contact to VA compensation is either a VSO or a company. Can you explain your statements?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you two stories by way of illustration on the VSO side, and then I do want to talk about the paid companies. My goodness, do I want to talk about those guys? So anyway, my first experience with the VSO personally on this was when I sat when I went through my retirement physical. I had to sit with a real VA person, as a VA employee. And this guy was a veteran. He would love to tell everybody how he was a veteran. And this was in New York State. And he was like, I don't know, he had let himself go after service in some kind of way. But anyway, so he's this guy who was, what he said to me as I was going through this process was, he took this, when I went in, let me back up. Let me start over. When I went into that appointment, what I said was, I'm here to file for stuff that was caused by combat. And he's like, okay, but what about all your other service connected stuff? And I said, I don't care about any of that. All I care about is the stuff that was caused by combat. So write that stuff down. He's like, okay. So he wrote down, there's like 6 conditions. And then he goes, well, what about your brain injury? And I said, well, I don't have a brain injury. And he said, well, but I can get you paid for it. And I go, hey man, I don't have a brain injury. I said, since I got blown up, I have gotten a master's degree and a PhD, and I worked at the White House, and I don't lash out at my wife. And I don't have a brain injury. I'm fine. I've taught at college. Like, I'm fine. And he goes, you're missing the point, dude. He goes, I can get you paid for it if you just put it down. You were knocked unconscious, weren't you? And I said, I absolutely was. I was unconscious for 3 weeks. And he said, I can get you paid for it. And I said, you're not listening to me, dude. I'm only going to claim stuff that's real. He said, okay, fine, whatever. Then he goes, well, what about your hearing loss? And I said, I don't have hearing loss. And he said, well, I don't believe you. You were a tanker, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, and I was in some explosions, including some really close ones, and I don't have hearing loss. And he's like, I'm not going to believe you until you go take a hearing test. So I did, and my hearing at age 42 or whatever it was the same as it was when I came in at 17. And he's like, fine, I won't put it down then. But he's like, I can get you paid for that. And so that's a accredited, no kidding, VA employee trying to tell me that I need to have as many disabilities as possible. And then later, and I didn't put this in my introduction, it's interesting, and somebody will mention it. For 2 years, I was the commissioner of the Department of Veteran Services for Virginia. So from 2022 January through 2024 January, 2 full years, I was in charge of all veterans stuff for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I had like 85 or so people doing veterans claims. And I would go around, my employees would submit claims to the federal government on behalf of the veteran, basically. So it's like state level qualified VSOs. Yeah. So I would go around and I'd sit with them while they talk to veterans and, hey, veteran, how you doing? That kind of stuff. And I remember I'm sitting with one of my qualified VSOs, and he goes to this veteran. He's like, hey man, I saw that you put hearing loss in your right ear on this thing. He goes, what about your left ear? And the guy's like, well, my left ear is fine. And the guy goes, yeah, but I can get you paid for it. Just, are you sure your right ear isn't working right? And so it was that coaching that made me like, oh my gosh. And then when you look at, and I'm not trying to sell books here. I don't care about that. When somebody buys one of my books on Amazon, I get like literally like 25 cents. Because Jeff Bezos needs to pay for his next yacht or whatever, I guess. But in the book, we have a whole bunch of VSRs, RVSRs, et cetera, who have said, you know what, this system is totally corrupt, and they give those stories in the book. So does everybody do it? No, But
Yeah.
does it happen? Absolutely. It sure does.
Okay, so here's what I got for you. So first, I would caution using like personal anecdotal experiences to like
Anecdotes are not.
broadly brush all
Sure.
VSOs are encouraging veterans to exaggerate symptoms. Also, and I'm just going to shoot straight here, okay? Also, what you said has nothing to do with veterans exaggerating symptoms because I had a TBI in the past. Now it's residuals. And so when you look at if someone were to ask me, do you have a brain injury? I would say no within the confines of the knowledge that I understand of brain injuries, which by the way is diddly squat. Okay. And so although let's say I went to a VSO and they did submit for TBI instead of vertigo or hearing loss or some other neurological condition, right? If they did submit for anything, I still have to require in the process a current chronic persistent diagnosis that must be clinically diagnosed. And so for me, for someone, not just me, for a veteran to say, I don't have this, it literally means nothing. Now, is it something that's prevalent in your life to where you're like I can tell you the disabilities I have that I deal with every day. IBS is one of them. Like that sucks. Okay. Every single day it sucks. That's a little more debilitating than something like tinnitus, at least in my case. And so you look at exaggerating symptoms and it's like, well, you're not really exaggerating symptoms because the condition must be diagnosed clinically. Now,
Absolutely.
I do think there is an argument, which I'm surprised you didn't bring it up. I'll just do it. I do think when it comes to exaggerating symptoms, you do have an argument, especially when it comes to mental health, that a veteran can exaggerate symptoms. And the GAO and VA-OIG have stated this. It's not an opinion. The fear is that veterans can exaggerate symptoms, not that they are, just to be clear.
Can you hear Clay?
Huh? Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
All right, hang on. Clay, I can't hear you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no big deal.
You cut out.
No big deal. Turn your volume up. Are you good?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now I got you back, Clay. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
on the TBI thing, I do want to flag that for you. So there's a study that was done in it's a journal called the Applied Neuropsychology Journal, and it was in 2017. It was in response to the fact that 120,000 veterans received in 2017. 120,000 veterans received service-connected disability for TBI. Okay. So here's what it said. They did two. Okay, so I'll just read this to you. 2 highly accurate performance validity measures. So a performance validity measure is when they ask you all these questions, but they do it in a way that if somebody is exaggerating, it will generate a score that shows exaggeration. Okay.
Yep.
So, and I know you guys know that, but I'm sort of doing it for the audience. So there's 2 highly accurate performance validity measures. The test of memory malingering. That is to say, like, do you remember things? And somebody's like, no. And then they say, what's your phone number? I don't know what the scale is, but test of memory malingering. And the medical symptom validity tests were selected to evaluate 74 veterans who had completed CNP exams for TBI. The results were conclusive. 52% of the participants, these were randomly selected participants, failed at least one performance validity test, while 33% failed both. In other words, at least 1/3 to 1/2 of the sample was found to be malingering TBI-related cognitive deficits. So when you think about malingering, there's the military version of that, which is like, my leg hurts, so I'm going to go on sick call, right? And that's not really what we're talking about. And the Washington Post had these stories like clear fraud, the guy that had the wheelchair but also was a power lifter, whatever. Those are kind of dumb stories. Those are not interesting stories to me. The interesting ones are the ones where a veteran can endorse this symptom and get this payment, or he can endorse this symptom and get this payment. And that's where that it's called there's 3 versions of malingering. There's oh shoot, I got it written down here. But there's one that's like obvious, sort of obvious fraud. And then there's one that's related to exaggeration of symptoms for the purpose of receiving secondary gain. And what happened is with PTSD in particular, there were a couple of guys. There's a clinical psychologist named Chris Free who was blowing the whistle on this at the VA in the mid 2010s. And the VA decided that the way that they were going to deal with this problem of malingering was they were just going to stop doing the validity tests at all. So they took away the ability of the raters to do claims that way. And to me, it's like, hey man, we can do better here. We can do better by figuring out who's sick, by getting the sick people the treatment they need, and then getting people back back to baseline if we can.
Yeah, so that's the argument. If I were you, I would have just led with that, right? Because when you look at VSOs are encouraging veterans to exaggerate symptoms, that's just crazy, to be honest with you. And if we look at individual anecdotes like your experiences as a veteran, then your experiences as a DVS head there is it's Department of Veteran Services of Virginia, right?
That's
DVS,
right.
yeah.
Yes.
And so to give you my experience, I walked into a DVS person. It was first an American Legion. No, it was a DAV person who was absolute trash. He couldn't turn on his computer, and he was in his 80s. He was also in 1st Battalion, 9th Marines during Vietnam. And I was like, you know what, dude? Don't worry about it. I'm going to go next door. He was having a hard day. And that's your run-of-the-mill VSO. It's someone who is they're challenged via computers. Okay. And so then I go next door to DVS. This is right on Quantico, and I know nothing. All right. I was in the Marine Corps for 10 years, did infantry, multiple deployments, went PSYOP, did more deployments. And I'm lucky to have a fortunate career to not be harmed. Right. And so I walked in this office and he asked me, hey, what do you want to claim? I have zero idea. None. Not at all. And then the DVS person suggested 3 things just by looking in my records and submitted the claim. And that appointment, start to finish, less than 10 minutes. You know what? Let's just call it 15 to give myself a buffer there. Okay, so I was in and out, boom, whatever. And then whenever I got out, the algorithm of the internet started pushing VA claim stuff to me. That's how I ended up seeing Combat Craig and was like, wow, there's a space on YouTube for VA stuff. And I was like, well, I watched a few videos and then I had to learn, hey, I didn't claim everything that I was supposed to claim. And by that time, I got my first rating. It was 70% out the gate. And then I went back to the same DVS rep and said, hey, there are things in my service records. I was seeing VA healthcare. I got a chronic diagnosis, a current chronic persistent diagnosis. Can I claim these? And I swear on everything I love, the dude said, hey, you got 70%. You should be happy with it. And I'm like, well, fine. But, we didn't claim, like, I'm not. If you look at what I'm rated for, everything's direct. Everything is direct. Okay. Now, when you look at the basis of service connection, which is another good argument that I think you have in your pocket for secondaries, when you look at the theories of service connection, direct is clear as day, that the VA requires medical evidence from service. The VA requires a current chronic persistent disability. The VA requires a medical nexus unless it's presumptive. And so I think it goes back to your opening statement, and I'm just going to be straight with you here. Are VSOs encouraging veterans to exaggerate their symptoms? I think that's baloney, and I would say disingenuous to testify before the Senate. And then I would also say that independent anecdotes and experiences, just like my experience means nothing, I don't think, your individual experience means nothing. You look at the whole of, are VSOs so good at their job? And the answer is no, they're not, because there's a market for VA claim companies. Like we have the data, and VA claim companies are a symptom of a system that's broken. Now, Jason was a VSO accredited, and so I'm going to pass it on to him. And and just real quick, when I say I'm being straight, I try to do that with grace, Daniel. So I don't want you to take my words.
No. You're great, and I appreciate that. Actually,
personally, I'm just presenting my arguments in a way that whenever you testify before the Senate and say that VSOs are encouraging veterans to exaggerate, the first thing I ask is, what world is this guy living in? right? Because
sure.
it's not the same. It's not my world.
Right. Yeah. You know what? It's a people business, right? So you're going to have good people and bad people, just like you had bad people in your organization in Virginia. It just happens. So when I was an accredited veteran service officer running my team, heavily involved on different commissions and committees and at the state level as a committee member, nowhere in our association for all of the county veteran service officers did anybody ever allude to, let's try to encourage people to falsify information or mislead or, encourage them to do, say a little bit more to get a higher rating. Never, ever, ever once. Do people do it? Sure. I'm sure people do. But I agree with you, Clay, 100% that using a one-time circumstance and getting a half dozen people to say, yep, the system's broken because they had that same experience, you're missing out on literally thousands and thousands and thousands of VSOs and representatives that are good and doing the right thing. I think an important piece here, Clay and Daniel, to bring up is your viewpoint on Daniel's viewpoint on what should be service connected was evident in his own claim. Although he would have been allowed to file for other things, he said, Daniel, you said, I only want to file for things that were directly, in my mind, caused from my military service. Well, that's not the law. Sure, you can file for less all day long. And it would be a disservice from any VSO to not make you open up your mind to other things that could potentially be service connected. Now, how they word it, how they say it, how that conversation unfolds, maybe some are a little bit, not the right way. I could get you paid more for that's probably not the right way to bring that conversation into the fold. But the reality is the conversation needs to be had because, quite frankly, in today's, let's talk about law. I know your viewpoint is we need to change the laws, change the rules, rip it all apart and change it. But the reality is that today the laws that we have for veterans and veterans benefits include anything that manifests during your time in service. And I know you don't like that.
Yeah.
But the reality is that veterans are more likely to come down with a whole host of different conditions at an earlier age than our civilian counterpart. Could it be due to our military service? Don't know. But it's the way the laws are today. And it would be, again, a disservice for any VSO to not try to have that conversation with a veteran, because most veterans, Daniel, believe that the only thing they could file for is, I lost my leg. That's the only thing I could file for. And I can guarantee you that you yourself have more than that. I lost my leg. That's the only thing I'm rated for. That's all I want to get rated for is just the leg loss. You have other things going on with you due to that, obviously, and you're rated for those things too, I'm sure. So, it's just, I agree. I agree with Clay on you need to be careful with saying it's everybody.
No, that's great. And I just want to address that really quick. So when I went into the VA to file for disability, to me, every claim that somebody puts in is a moral statement, right? What the law says is what is legal. What I'm arguing for I'm not even talking about the law. I'm talking about asking veterans to take a look at what is moral, not what is legal, because there's a lot of things that are legal that aren't moral, right? I think I'm going to out myself as a pro-lifer. I think abortion is horrible. I think it's a great evil. It's also legal in all 50 states and on and on and on, right? So the law doesn't tell us what's moral. We have to determine for ourselves what we are morally willing to do. So here's what my contention was. My contention was, I call it the 10 citizen test. And I would ask your private chat or your chat people here to think about this too. Is the 10 citizen test is this. If you walk up to 10 random citizens, you go to the mall, you go to the gas station, you go to the grocery store, you walk up to 10 people and you say, hey, it's Veterans Day today. I'm a disabled veteran. 100% of them, all 10 are going to say, thank you for your service. Now, how many of them mean it is a totally different thing, but all 10 of them are going to say, thank you for your service. And then you say, I'm a disabled veteran, and here are my conditions. And you list your conditions 1 to N, however many, whatever N is. And if you can do that without embarrassment, or you can do that without the civilian who never served saying, well, wait a second, I have that same thing. Why do I not get paid for it? If you can do it without embarrassment and without that person saying, well, wait a second, I have that too, then probably you're legit from a moral perspective. But if you're filing for stuff, like if you're filing for low back pain and you're 50, I'm 50, I turned 50 in February. If you're filing for low back pain and you just turned 50, maybe it's because all 50-year-olds have backs that are not like they were when they were 20, right? Like, is that my fellow citizens? But listen, is it my fellow citizens' responsibility? Because I don't view VA disability payments as any different, really. If it's filed for, hang on, let me land the plane really quick.
Yeah.
All right.
If it's filed for something that's nonsense or that's common to the human condition, I'll say, then it's no different than going into your neighbor's house when she's away and written through her purse and taking money out, because all that money comes from somebody, and so there's a moral component here that's different from the legal one.
So the low back pain one, it was a horrible example. Somebody who files a claim, and this is the problem with moving from lieutenant colonel to high level. I'm overseeing a department. You were not running claims. You weren't there. So this is where the problem is. The majority, high number of veterans wait years and years and years and years before they even think about filing a claim. Then it's only because 15 of their friends keep saying, look, your life would be a little bit easier. You could go get treatment from the VA. You'll get a little bit of extra money, can help you with things if you actually went and filed for that back condition that you've been complaining about for the last 30 years. Yeah, I do have documentation in my record. Look, I didn't wait till I was 50. I'm 51 now. But when I was in the Marine Corps, mortars, 81 millimeter, you're humping everything around, right? Yeah, everybody knows, right? Tons of weight, you're carrying it, it's all stupid, whatever. You're just wrecking yourself, which is fine. I don't know what happened, but I tweaked my back so bad this one time that I had no choice but to go to medical. I got muscle relaxers and pain pills and everything else, and my back was never the same. I'm bracing my knees against the sink to brush my teeth. I can't stay asleep. I'm waking up. I get out of bed and I'm hunched over and I'm walking like a 90-year-old, and it stayed like that. And I filed for a claim when I got out of the Marine Corps in 97, was denied. Okay, I gave them all the proof, and I was denied right away. Okay. So I give the middle finger to the VA and I go, you know what? Thank you. I'm never going to talk to you again. And I move on. 12 years later, I joined the Army National Guard. 3 years into the National Guard, I damaged my left eye. It's like a snow globe now. I've got recurrent eye. It's funky. Anyway, and I thought, damn, I got to file a VA claim now. I remember what happened last time. This sucks, but I'm not going to let my eye just be like this. This is horrible. So I dust off my back stuff. Now it's been 15 years. File my back stuff, finally get approved. Get a 10% for my lower back and 10% for each leg for the radiculopathy going down. So service connected, clearly, all my medical records from inside, and I've had constant back issues going on. This isn't an old man thing. This is something I've been dealing with. And the majority of people go to the grocery store. This is the problem. Go to the grocery store, get a handful of Motrin, because that's what we were taught, because our leadership wanted us to be, what does the leadership want? You want a fully deployable unit. You don't need people having problems on the roster. So guess what? Nobody needs to be going to medical. You keep everybody, you just force feed them some Motrin and call it a day. Clay, what are your thoughts on the delayed filing for old man problems?
Okay, so I'm going to actually give Daniel here some grace on that one, because I think you do have an argument. I wouldn't have approached it the same way, right? And so, for instance, when you look at the direct service criteria, which the basis of criteria matters in each claim. In this case, it's direct, meaning the military directly caused this condition. And so if you have someone who experienced back pain in their 4 years of the Marine Corps, right? I'm using the Marine Corps because I'm biased. And they got out in 97, like Jason did, because he's old, right? And then they wait until today, November of 2025, to file a claim, but they didn't go see medical, right? They have absolutely zero complaints, or even complaints that could even correlate to having back pain. That claim is going to get denied. 100% of the time, that claim is going to be denied. And not just for they didn't have evidence from service. Okay. So this is whenever it gets better, is it's because they lack showing a current chronic persistent disability. So someone in 1997, what they would need to have to be service connected today in 2025 is evidence from service. Oh, by the way, almost 30 years. It's crazy to say almost 30 years, right? But almost 30 years of current chronic persistent disability. And a buddy letter, this is a misconception, a buddy letter saying that, yeah, my guy had back pain, that's not going to cut it, okay? Because a C&P examiner wants to see medical evidence because they're in the medical field. And so that direct theory of service connection is going to be denied for someone who's in their 50s and have back pain. And what it reminds me of, Daniel, is going back to your not your opening statement. It was you answered a question from a senator, I forgot which one, about hypertension and the PACT Act. And I think the same argument applies, where you do have an argument, but you miss other data that's critical. So for instance, and to paraphrase, to catch everyone up, a question was brought up, and Daniel Gade, you talked about how a Vietnam era veteran gets hypertension because they're old and fat, just like my mom. If my mom's watching this, I love you, Mom. I'm sorry. She's old and fat. Okay. And so she could have.
Not supposed to say that about your mother.
Yeah. No, I know. But that's like the correlation there.
Yeah.
And right. In that instance, I totally agree with you. However, what we're missing is the date of diagnosis. So for instance, a 23-year-old should not have IVDS in their spine. Shouldn't have it, right? That's insane. Lumbar strain, whatever. You know, they're in their 50s. They have lumbar strain, no evidence from service. They're going to be denied every time. I would guarantee my paycheck on that. But then you have a Vietnam era veteran who had hypertension when they were 24, is denied. I mean, they probably didn't even submit a claim, to be honest with you. The PACT Act comes out. They are old and fat. Got it. So they meet your criteria, but there's this little piece of data that I think everyone forgot, is they've had hypertension since they were 24 from Agent Orange exposure. And so whenever you say blanketly you have hypertension because you're old and fat, there is an argument there, but the way in which you deliver it completely overshadowing the date of diagnosis, and that's just one little aspect there. I think it's a pretty hard slap in the face. I'm going to be honest with you. Whenever you said that, I was like, there's no way this guy just said that. And I have to assume you just didn't think about the date of diagnosis.
No, so the date of diagnosis actually doesn't matter for a presumptive condition anyway. So if you're a Vietnam veteran who served boots on the ground, and let's say you're the youngest Vietnam veterans right now are like 72. And an IOM study, let me back up. The Institute of Medicine, which is like a federal government funded like research body, basically, a couple of years ago ran a study where they discovered that veterans and non-veterans, once you adjust for sex and race and age, have the same exact rates of hypertension. Veterans and non-veterans have the same rates of hypertension, and it's a presumptive in the PACT Act. So you have people coming to the VA saying, oh, my hypertension is the result of my military service over there. It's the government's fault. Sorry, I'm pointing over there. It's the government's fault that I'm sick. And what that does is it has a powerful psychological effect. And I'll illustrate that by telling you a very brief story. It's from the Bible. if you remember, at the first sin in the Bible is when Eve takes the apple, right? And she bites the apple or whatever, and God shows up, and God's like, "Yo, what are you guys doing, you idiots?" Paraphrasing the book of Genesis.
I got it. Yeah.
And the second sin is the one that I find very interesting, because that's when Adam points to Eve and he says, "The woman made me do it." And so the sin there is diverting responsibility from where it belongs, Adam, because he failed to lead his family properly, to Eve and saying it's Eve's fault. And so as veterans, one of the things that is very, very common is for people to look at their lives, and if their lives aren't going exactly how they wanted them to go, it's very easy to point and say, well, no, it's because I served in Ramadi 20 years ago. And it's like, well, do we really want systems that encourage people to not only view themselves as their sickest selves and be reluctant to improve because they'll lose their disability, because they're afraid they'll lose their disability compensation, even though that very rarely happens. But do we want people diverting their responsibility from themselves to somebody else? And in my view is that that's deeply destructive to the veteran when they do that, because now they're not going to work out because it's the government's fault. They're not going to diet because it's the government's fault. And I know that's a moral argument. And you guys are in the world of law and legal. My argument is that if there's going to be changes, we ought to let those changes be informed by the moral imperative of helping people have their best lives. Over.
But again, we're using generalities and blanket statements, right? So, when you look at presumptive conditions, they go through a scientific and medical review as well. They're not just willy-nilly going, you know what? Yeah, that's it. The research that you quoted, where the rates are the same, did it take into account age?
Yes.
Right? Not just, okay. So I find that very, very interesting, because I would love for the reviews from the presumptive medical review process to really be looked at, because obviously we have conflicting information here. Now, it's like a lot of things, right? It's like a lot of things that you're going to get conflict. You search hard enough, you can find something that's going to speak your language. You type in 15 different things to prove your point, you're going to find one. The reality, though, is that, again, veterans often experience chronic illnesses earlier in life, and these will be conditions like, and this is through research too, arthritis, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, which I know you love, respiratory illness, chronic kidney disease. Those are some of the conditions that veterans experience at a much younger age.
Yeah, fair enough. And where they do experience those as a result of military service, then I don't have a moral problem with it. But when people...
So let me ask you this then. So let's say that veterans who worked in, you were a tank, okay? So tanks. Now, everybody that's in a tank, maybe not everybody comes out of that with, there's new research on kind of, I don't remember the exact term, basically like micro TBIs, smaller blasts over and over and over again can cause issues, mortars, that type of stuff, maybe a heavy machine gun, maybe. So not everybody in those types of fields is going to have a TBI, but maybe there are some that do. Maybe not everybody comes out of that with migraine headaches, but maybe some do. Maybe not everybody in there is experiencing these things. So where do you draw the line with that? Do you go, well, I think that migraine headaches shouldn't be allowed because you can't say they were caused by service? Well, can you or can't you? Because if some people are experiencing those due to their time in service, and back to Clay's point on what makes a service-connected condition is simply it manifesting during your time in service is a service-connected condition. So we're not talking about secondaries, we're talking about service-related. And I know your issue is that line between just manifested during your service and directly the Humvee rolled over and landed on my leg. Obviously, that's an issue, right? So all of this, though, seems, and I know we're going to end up just talking in circles a little bit. So what I do want to do, though, is I kind of, unless Clay has a question, I want to shift a little bit here, because it seemed to me in listening to your hearing, and for those that did not watch the hearing, I encourage you to go back and watch it, so you can kind of just get a flavor of what was going on both sides of the arguments and all that stuff. It seemed that the effort that you were putting out there was essentially to eliminate, if you had a magic wand and you could have the VA turn however which way, it would be essentially eliminate the majority of conditions that would just have manifested during your time in service, pretty much the majority of secondary conditions, and really only dive in on things that you could absolutely prove were caused by your time in service. Now, with that being said, it seemed, and I'm saying it this way because I want to get an acknowledgement from you on if this is true or if I'm just completely off base.
No problem. I'm excited about the question.
Okay. It seemed to me like this was a way to save money from the government. Taxpayer dollars are now saved, right? But not really, not taken from the VA. They stay in the VA, but now that money that's saved from disability compensation, so pulled away from vets, is now available to educate and train and all those things, job placement, and create a more robust atmosphere in that world. Is that what I'm kind of picking up on kind of your vision, or am I missing something?
So that's a reasonable summary. I don't want to go down too far down the route of, like, you could clip that and you could, put a screaming headline on it or whatever. That's fine. And if you want to do that, that's totally cool. But
I'm too lazy. Won't happen.
What I would argue, though, is that we ought to be very careful to use the word disability until such time. Until such time as we've put maximum effort into helping the person have a meaningful, positive life. So let's say that and I always use the swords and plows, right? So before we came in the military, we were all productive plows, or at least had the capability to be productive plows. We were working in grocery stores, we were working on the farm, we were in some job, or we had the capability to enter some job, and then we went in the military instead. And had we not entered the military, our life would have been like this. But when we did enter the military and we got blown up or mangled or sick or poisoned or raped or whatever it was, now maybe our life is here. I think that the best way we can serve veterans is by closing this gap with rehabilitation and employment and counseling and more medical treatment, like all of those conditions, the hypertension look, everybody loves to make fun of sleep apnea. And if you're in the super chat and you're getting sleep apnea PTSD or 50% for sleep apnea, like, you're part of the problem. Kick rocks and donate money through the super chat. But my point is, those people aren't disabled, but what they should be is treated for those conditions. And the VA doesn't do a good job of treating for those conditions. Instead, they compensate them. And what happens, particularly with mental health disorders, and I can talk about this study if you'd like me to, what happens with mental health disorders is once people get to their 100% rating that they're after, they stop seeking treatment. And so they get stuck in this position of not getting any better. And for me, again, like, people are making fun of me in the chat about using moral language and, oh, he's quoting the Bible and he's using moral language. Hey, listen, okay. But anyway, so from a moral perspective, what we ought to do, instead of just putting those rusty swords on the shelf, we ought to be doing everything we can to refashion the swords into productive plows and put them back into society in a way that they can stand on their own 2 feet. If they have 2 feet, they can stand on their own 2 feet and provide for their families and get the economic and the moral and the social justification that we all get through our work.
And I'm going to kick it to you in a second, Clay. I promise. Yeah. So yes, on paper, on a bumper sticker, on all of that, that sounds great, and I agree with that. But that is a lieutenant colonel hat on, talking to a bunch of 20-year-olds. It's not the reality. The reality is you're talking to a bunch of older veterans. The average age is in their 40s of veterans who are receiving disability compensation.
Yeah, it's
So,
like 62. It's like 62.
So you got to know your audience. That you're not talking. Look, as a lieutenant colonel talking to your 20-year-olds about everybody needs to pass PT. Awesome, cool, all day long. But as you know, as age is not kind for some people. And the older you get, the wider that disparity between each individual becomes. All the 20-year-olds are cookie cutters. They're all the same.
Yeah, they're
As we get older, things change, and it's not as easy as you think. And it would be incredibly difficult from a gigantic VA perspective, looking down at the potential of 17 million veterans. Obviously, there's 6 point whatever million that are disability compensation, but that's a big number. And to try to do what you're saying is a blanket, let's do that, it won't work.
Yeah,
Clay.
well, policy, like policy is really hard when you start talking about individual variations, but you're talking about 18 million or, roughly 18 million veterans the VA thinks they have. Maybe the number's 16.5, maybe it's 20, who knows? The VA doesn't know. But anyway, so you have to look at large numbers and you have to look at broad themes when you're trying to reform a big complex system like this. Looking at individual anecdotes, you called me out on that earlier correctly, right? My little anecdote is not data. The plural of anecdote is not data. I get all that. But as we're designing a system, let's design a system that prioritizes treatment, that even pays people to go to treatment. Yes, let's do that. Every time you go to a PTSD, counseling session, let's send you a check for $100 because now you've at least taken positive steps.
You got to swim further upstream. You're tackling the problem as the oil went down the river and is now in the ocean. You need to be a better. You need to talk to the other lieutenant colonels and get people into medical. Have real medical professionals in there that are documenting the individual's situation. You need to talk about skill bridge. You need to say, hey, look, let them go. We need to change the military, and instead of doing a 4-year contract, guess what? You got 4 years and 3 months. Those last 3 months are about finding a job.
I love that idea.
Training.
A point of maximum agreement. I totally agree with that. I think that's great. I think
you got to go upstream.
I think SkillBridge is a great program. I think and in the Independence Project, which was the name of that randomized control trial, what we did is we actually paid people a 25% wage bonus on their earned income. So if they got a job for $4,000 a month, we gave them just cash, $1,000. We give them a 25% wage bonus. The idea was to get them to really embrace the market and a job as the way to get that identity and that income, rather than come back to the VA. How can I get my rating the maximum? I had this guy, so I had this guy. I hope this is the last individual story I'll tell because the anecdotes are not data. But I had this guy.
It is A-okay. It's A-okay.
He was like 78 years old, and when I was commissioner, he used to call me all the time. And his question was, he'd been a nuclear Navy guy, but during a time when all of that was classified, and so it was like in the 60s, and some of the stuff he was involved with had these big NDAs that he couldn't. Anyway, he was focused solely on how can I get my compensation as high as possible. And I asked him one time, I'm like, hey, how old are you? His name was Ed, I think. How old are you, Ed? And he goes, I'm 78. And I go, how many grandkids do you have? He's like, I've got 10 grandkids, whatever it was. I go, wouldn't your time be better spent playing with your grandkids rather than compiling letters to send to the VA about how mad you are? How much time do you have left? Like, let's focus on what's big and important, and not this bullcrap bureaucratic fight to try to get to 100%, as if being 100% disabled veteran is some kind of like badge of honor. Like when people, it grosses me out when people say to me, oh, what's your disability rating? I'm like, my disability rating is kick rocks is what my disability rating is, and you guys have actually both been good about this, calling out people on TikTok for, laying on the beach and making jokes about how much money they're making off their fellow citizens, because it's gross. It's just not a good life. And it's not the kind of life I want to live. And it's not the kind of life that I encourage the veterans who are around me to live.
Yeah. So I'm on board with the not flaunting your stuff, especially the, I'm just gonna call it the TikTok generation, which is going to be your young millennial, Gen Z-ish type audience. Back to what we were talking about, though, about working. The assumption is that you're making, and this is what I've gathered, is that if you're 100% P&T, permanent and total, you don't have to work anymore. And my question to you is, how many 100% P&Ters are working and how many aren't working? Because everyone I know who's P&T, and it's an individual anecdote, I got it. Every single year, my friends and I, we go camping for the Marine Corps' birthday. It's just like our 8th or 9th year doing it. We just went camping last Thursday, and then we got back on Saturday night. Happens every single year. All of us, except for one, are 100% P&T, and all of us work full time.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, how many veterans who are 100% P&T choose not to work? And then I would reverse that and say, well, how many are 100% P&T and are working? And then I would look at the argument of, if you receive compensation, the incentive is you don't have to work. Because I think there's a bridge that's missing there, and I'm not connecting those dots at all.
Yeah, sure. So if you plot out on a graph, and I wish I could show you this graph. I have it in my notes, but when you plot out on a graph, percent in the labor market versus their disability rating, what you see is, unsurprisingly, most people with 0% work, and 10%, those people are either working or they're on some kind of other, SSDI or something that also blocks work, by the way. But anyway, so, and obviously the number of those people who work is very high. And a certain percent of 100% permanent and total veterans also work. And that's great. Like I have, my company has over half of our workforce is veterans. And of those veterans, a lot of them are permanent and total 100%. That's great. Yes, work. Absolutely. No problem. No problem with that at all. But the numbers go down as the compensation goes up. And this is a problem that's been well noted for years and years and years. It's true of SSDI. It's especially true of IU, I think. And I'm going to draw some slings and arrows, and I don't care because I think IU is the worst program in the federal government.
I'm on that same page. I promise you. We've had that conversation
explicitly, mostly. And the reason I say that is explicitly because it pays veterans only if they don't work. Right. So they lose all the benefits of being in the workplace, including income and, vitality from your friends and all those things. Yeah. They lose that for small financial gain. And I think that's a recipe for suicide all day, every day. And it's disgusting. So
I do want to rope back to what Jason brought up, because you said as the ratings get higher, those veterans who are working go down.
Which is unsurprising because these are people with disabilities.
What's the median age there for who's rated? Was it 62?
The median age of veterans in America is like 64-ish.
Right. So don't you think that old people don't work who are retirement age? Like,
well,
don't you think that would skew the
this
data?
Is people. Sorry, yeah, this is people of prime working years. This is people who are not 65 and above. Those people are lopped out of this study, and then that's where you find that data, and you can find it.
Who did this study?
I think it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'll see if I'll find it for you.
So some interesting numbers, right? Is when we're talking about this type of stuff, the reality is whatever the number of veterans are, right? I mean, you do 7 different Google searches, you get 7 different numbers. Let's just call it 17 million, right? So 17 million veterans in the U.S. 30%-ish are service connected. Well, 70% are not. So we got 70% right out the gate that aren't taking advantage of anything. So already we have a very high veterans that are incentivized to work. So as you're looking at the veteran sphere, right? Because let's look at all veterans. Veterans, 17 million, 70% are probably absolutely working, right? If they're in those prime years. Then you have the 30% of service-connected veterans, whatever those percentages are, right? The 10% is a little bit, goes up, whatever. Of that 30% that are service-connected, 65% of that 30% are rated 50% or below.
Right.
So
Right.
more than half are at the 50 or below. So automatically those people are probably working heavily, I would think. Maybe even 2 jobs.
Yeah, probably. I think
They're
that's
doing
probably right.
Uber. They're doing Uber on the side too, right? Now, TDIU, total disability, individual unemployability, right? I don't agree with it either. I think that typically if you're that bad off due to your service-connected conditions,
Be 100.
you should just be 100%. I mean, and if you can work a little job here, work a little job there, cool. You know, you're proof, Daniel, that, look, having a major disability, losing a limb, you can still work and earn good income. I mean, you probably make over
and-
200,000 a year. So
Well,
TDIU
can I say
recipient
something briefly about
represent
that?
almost. Let me land the plane. TDIU recipients represent 7.8%. Now, that was in September of 2017. It actually went down 6.8% in September of 2023. And the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, which usually hates veterans, at least the benefits, right? And want to, curtail. CBO states, in fact, most working age veterans who receive disability benefits are in fact employed.
Of course.
So, all right. So, okay, plane has landed.
Yeah, of course. I don't disagree with anything that you just said. I think that's all right. When it comes to these, and I mean, I'll use the word like minor disabilities, or, you can draw the line at 30% and below or 50% below, or like I did in the testimony, I did some back of the envelope math on 60% and below. What my argument there is with respect to workforce stuff is that VR&E is way underfunded. We don't do enough with VR&E. We don't do enough with medical care for these kind of conditions to try to, instead of telling somebody they're disabled, why don't we put maximum effort into making them not disabled? Hello, like, let's control the symptoms. Let's get people the counseling they need. Let's do all of that stuff. And so that they're ready and able to go into the labor market and provide for themselves and their families. Employment, especially for men, is a powerful source of identity. And for those veterans who don't have the identity that they get through work, we know from suicide-related studies that those people are at higher risk of self-harm. They're at higher risk of divorce. There's all kinds of bad outcomes. So let's prevent those bad outcomes by taking the disability system. And yes, let's take guys who are, got shot in the head and are, permanent wheelchair and like totally disabled. Let's take those people and let's give them the world. I'm totally cool with that. But let's also say to everybody else, hey, our job as a society is to help you close the gap between what you would have been but for service and what you are now, whatever that is. Individual assessment, job training, education, internships, skill bridge, all of that stuff is super positive to get people to a positive state in their life.
Again, the average age, you're talking in 60 years old and you're talking about an internship. It's not a cookie cutter. Blanket statements aren't going to work. It's the problem. And you touched on it, and we touched on it earlier. And I want to get Clay's thoughts on this too. Really, it's the swimming upstream thing. It's going back into military service and helping that transition appropriately. You know as well as I do, we do a hell of a good job getting people in, getting them, assimilated into military culture. We spend months and months and months and hundreds of thousands of dollars on individuals to get them through their boot camp, through their first school or second school, whatever it is, to get them trained up. We need to do a better job getting them out. I am not a fan of reducing anything on the VA disability compensation side at all. The only thing I'm a fan of on that is reducing the name, getting rid of disability out of it, because I agree it's a negative connotation. You got to remove the word disability and just say VA compensation, period. And that is a negative thing that should go away. I wanted to throw out a couple things here, and then I want to kick it to Clay. 32% of eligible service members utilize the Skill Bridge program, despite over 70% expressing interest, which is so less than half who say, hey, I want to do Skill Bridge. Less than half get to actually utilize it. As a commander, it's kind of the commander's discretion. And I get it. You're trying to balance, not you specifically, but as a commander, you're trying to balance your your unit at whatever level. So I get it. There needs to be a better way to do that. And again, I'm a fan of increase. If somebody's going to sign up for 4 years, believe me, they'd sign up for 4 years and 3 months. If that last 3 months was to help them fine tune employment. The transition assistance program, I mean, it's a bit lackluster. And
it's hot garbage.
I mean, I'm trying to be, it could be much better, right? And we all agree. Unfortunately, it's condensed to a very small PowerPoint. This is how many people got to say whatever they got to say within this many amount of days, and it's that whole process needs to be redone. Here's an interesting one. Approximately 54% of eligible enlisted military veterans used their post 9/11 GI Bill benefits for higher education between 2009 and 2019.
Yeah, that's not enough.
Huge.
That's horrible.
So all of this has to be talked about. And I mean, look, the last 3 months of service, getting you enrolled, getting you started, getting that process started are all very important. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on the VRNE program. 40% of veterans who have applied for VRNE in 2020, granted 5 years ago, were found entitled to services. There needs to be a better way. The counselors, in my opinion, have you ever used VRNE?
No, I haven't. And the reason is because, the Army did a good job of sending me to get a master's. That's true.
Yeah.
After. So
not everybody's
program. That's right.
Yeah.
Not everybody has access to that. And on SkillBridge and on VRNE, I think SkillBridge should be something that's mandatory. If somebody says they want it, they should have to get it, provided that they're not you don't want people who are on the way to another than honorable discharge or something to
right. Yeah.
But if they've honorably served, I think SkillBridge should be mandatory. And then also on VRNE, I think VRNE should be, a whole bunch more resources could be put into VRNE to help people have a better life so that they're not looking for, oh, I got to get my tinnitus in so that I get 10%. 10% stupid. I get it. But let's get people to a better life rather than have them stuck, chasing this, chasing this disability system.
Yeah, I have I am going to switch gears here. The only thing
I really want to see the questions. These questions are awesome.
Yeah.
There's Penrod Auto Services. I love you. You're going to have to give these guys a donation, and then I'll answer your question.
No, we're probably going to save it. We're going to go through the questions, I promise, before we end the stream. There's just some major things I want to cover as well. But what the VRNE discussion makes me think of is it's kind of hard because, so for instance, 2 of my best friends refuse to use their GI Bill, and I just want to take their face and just shake it and tell them how stupid they are. Okay, one of them's actually watching this right now, and he's upstairs, so I know he's listening. So you should use your GI Bill. The issue is that he won't, right? And what it makes me think of are the types of people that are recruited. And I'll tell you straight up, I would love to say I joined the Marine Corps based off of patriotism and heroic and all this cool stuff. But the fact of the matter is I joined because I didn't want to go to college, and my mom worked fast food and I didn't want that life. And so when I got out, I didn't go straight to college. I had to get slapped in the face and be like, oh, wow, this is for me. And so when it comes to education and training, the VA can only do so much. The veteran must be invested and take the first step. They have to. Just like VA healthcare is provided to every veteran, period. Does every veteran use it? No, they don't. You'll get a billion different reasons, right? And so there's other aspects to take into consideration. But anyways.
Yeah. One of the things about you just said something which was not quite accurate, and I want to make sure that people know the difference.
Yes.
So my view is that so not every veteran gets VA healthcare. You get healthcare. You get VA healthcare for a certain period after you get out of the Army or out of the military, and it always shifts around. I think it's 5 years right now, and then you get it if you have a service-connected condition. But one of the things that I said in my testimony was that I think we should break the link between disability compensation and healthcare and give all veterans free healthcare for their service connected conditions without requiring it to be a disability compensation first. So if you have sleep apnea, you should absolutely 100% go and get a CPAP. You're driving your wife crazy with your snoring anyway. And it's dangerous. It's bad for you to have sleep apnea. But once you have that CPAP, now you're in a place where the healthcare that you've been given is healthy, is good enough to get you functional in society. And so, if we break that link, then we don't have so many people, because a lot of people, you guys have heard this 100 times probably, where people are like, I really want healthcare, but I got to apply for disability to get healthcare. Let's break that link. Let's give veterans the healthcare they need.
And that's not fully true either. I mean, that's a path into VA healthcare is service connection, and that's often talked about. But I just pulled up the form. It's the VA form 1010. So if you're a former prisoner of war, if you have the Purple Heart, if you're a recently discharged combat veteran, or those who served in a toxic exposure risk activity, those who discharged for a disability incurred or aggravated in the line of duty, so that would be kind of your service-connected stuff, receiving service-connected disability compensation, receiving VA pension, non-service-connected, which basically means tested at that point. If you're receiving Medicaid benefits, for those who served in an Agent Orange exposure location, for those who served in Southwest Asia during the Gulf War between August 2nd, 1990 and November 11th, 1998, and those who served at least 30 days at Camp Lejeune between August 1st, 53 and 1987, December 31st. Those last couple ones got added in there with the PACT Act, and actually opened up the doorway to more than 1 million veterans being eligible to get into VA healthcare, which was part of the hiring frenzy that went on there for a little while. Anyway, so yes, service connection, that is a way. It is a doorway into VA healthcare. And I'm glad that you did bring up those who get out. You got that little 5-year period. Take advantage of that. Highly suggested. Back to you, Clay.
Yeah, it's inclusive to all with like exclusive properties there. Anyways, something I do want to bring up, and this is a big one here. I think if I got to ask you one question and just have you explain yourself or your thought process, rather, it would be this one. All right. And I'm being straight up with you. This one got under my skin. And so I'm very curious as to what you are going to say. All right. So you stated, and this is paraphrased, I'm not reading a direct quote, that 9 out of the top 10 disabilities are, quote, totally unverifiable. Not kind of, not a little bit, totally. They are 100% totally unverifiable. And then on your testimony there, the written testimony, there's a little footnote, and you list out the top 10 disabilities, which are tinnitus, knee, back, arm, hearing loss, scars, burns, sciatica, ankle, migraine, and PTSD. Of those, only scars or burns are readily identifiable and not subject to feigning or exaggeration. Now, I am almost certain that you watched the video with Dr. Sharma and I, because I brought in a physician and a board-certified psychiatrist to go one by one and say, hey, are these totally unverifiable? He said no. He explained it. It was like an hour-long video. I'm just going to assume that he's right because he is a physician and a board-certified psychiatrist. So now I'm going to ask you, are 9 out of the top 10 disabilities that are claimed by veterans totally unverifiable?
Okay, so what was the actual quote, Clay? Do you remember?
I mean, I'll pull it up.
I'll give it to you because I got my written testimony right here. It was totally unverifiable or easily exaggerated. Okay. So put a pin in that thought just for a second. Let me turn to the DBQ.
I'm here.
All right, perfect. Let me turn to the DBQ for. I'll just grab the bull by the horns. The DBQ for PTSD. Okay. Yeah. So if you turn to page. Let me see, page 4. No, this is clinical findings.
It's all right. I have a magical thing here.
Yeah.
And I think it will work.
Okay.
There we go. I'm on it.
So if we go to section 2, subsection 2A, relevant social, marital, family history.
Yep.
How hard is it for me to tell a story, me personally? How hard is it for me to tell a story that makes you think that I am totally disabled due to PTSD?
Right. So we're on PTSD, right? So
Yeah.
I do think.
So remember, what we said was either totally unverifiable or easily
Yeah.
exaggerated. And if you look in the medical, I'm going to give you the actual. There's a textbook on this,
Ooh.
and it's the textbook that the VA is supposed to be using, but they don't.
Does it start with an M?
No, it's the diagnostic. It's not the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. This book is called The Clinical Assessment of Malingering and Deception, which is the foremost text on the subject. It said in the 1990s, a consensus of top mental health experts advised that patients seeking money in the form of disability benefits be excluded from clinical trials for PTSD, noting that pursuing compensation results in them being basically willing to misrepresent their condition. And let me see, where's the actual other quote? I'm looking for the other one. So
I concede that mental health can be exaggerated, and I said that in the beginning, and I get that because you are correct that it can be exaggerated. The only thing I would fight, or I would counter with, is what about those veterans who have documented medical evidence of symptoms? And listen, how many veterans do we all know that are divorced and have broken things, have punched walls in their holes because they're unable to control their emotions of anger, and all these little hinted at PTSD, which is just one. There's depression, anxiety, insomnia, whatever. And so can they be exaggerated? I totally agree with you on that. I would counter with what about those with medical evidence? Now,
yeah, totally. Okay, perfect.
PTSD, I would totally give you that win. That is A-okay. Back to the totally unverifiable, also the other 9 conditions. How is what about like ankle, sciatica, back strain, knee? How are all of those totally unverifiable?
Yeah, let's do. I think arm pain is on the top 10, isn't it? Ridiculosity.
Yeah, so everything listed here is on the top 10. It depends on how you break it down by.
All we're saying here is that they could be. Veterans could be doing this, right?
Yes, and there are dozens of claims companies that get paid to give you a DBQ.
Their incentive. Okay, yeah, but at the bottom of that DBQ, a doctor has to sign it and put their license on the line.
Absolutely, and you know what? In the book, there's a doctor in Puerto Rico who, for $250, she will examine you.
One doctor out of 300,000 doctors. So let's talk about real big numbers, because look, you're going to find fraud. If you took all your energy and time and looked into Social Security Administration, you'd have the same damn arguments.
100% correct.
Anytime you have anything that has a nickel to it, there's going to be people that are doing fraud. Then you're going to have people that are making money off the people that are wanting to do fraud. Look, I'm not saying all veterans are saints, but a good portion of us try pretty damn hard to be honest with ourselves. And there's even a bigger number, Daniel. There's even a bigger number of people that go, you know what? I still got my legs. I'm not going to file because somebody like Daniel needs to do it, and he needs it more than me. So I'm going to go live my life the best I can without any additional help from the VA whatsoever. There's way more of those people as evidenced. The percentage is massive. So I think that painting this broad stroke of veterans are out there deceiving and painting this picture of people out there trying to take advantage of the system is a very, very dangerous position, because it's filled with blanket statements and little tiny, here's 7 people over here, 14 people over there. The IG themselves stated that fraud is minute within the VA. Now, granted, is there exaggeration? Are they missing stuff? Sure. But we're talking about millions and millions and millions of people. How do we fix it? what you're worrying about, which is wrong. And I agree. People doing fraud should be caught and slammed. I don't think that, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase, I guess, Tammy Duckworth now, that not at the expense of the entire system. We need to swim upstream. Commanders at every level need to do a better job at making sure that their soldiers, sailors, Marines, Guardians, airmen, whatever it is, get the proper education between their ears so they can jump out and have a successful life. Period. It starts there.
Yeah, Jason, I don't disagree with you that there are a lot of veterans who are doing the right thing, and a lot of veterans who
The
show up and
vast
say,
majority. The vast majority, Daniel. Vast.
I'll even give you the majority, no problem. But when you look at the studies on this, you see again and again and again, dating back to the 1870s. I've got an 1870 study here about how people get better after their service and then they continue to seek disability compensation. That was from 1870. There's another one, IOM and Institute of Medicine in 2006 and 2007 called for stricter DSM-4 standards because people were feigning. There's, there's just so much of this that it's super difficult to even give it to you all.
But some of it's between your ears though, Daniel. You yourself are the type of person that goes, you know what? I am so morally here compared to everybody else that I am only going to apply for what I think the military did to me, and that is it. Even though I know legally I have all these other things that I could potentially file for, I'm so morally right that I'm going to ignore what's legally allowed to me. I guarantee that if you own your house, if you own your house and there's a 2% interest rate available today and you have a 7%, why wouldn't you take advantage of it? Right? It's there for you. You're not doing anything illegal, but what's happening is that this rhetoric and this conversation is absolutely shaming veterans for taking the benefits that are legally available to them. Shaming for something that's legal, then painting the brush of fraud, all these fraudsters out there, and putting those people into the same bucket as these fraudsters who are painting unrealistic situations. So I'm not happy with the way that it all gets portrayed, because I think that it's very blurry. And I think that it's much like the Washington Post piece, where it just blurs into this veterans fraud. We should get rid of the majority of the VA disability compensation system, and we should do something else for veterans who are average median age in their 40s at least. And we need to go get them new jobs, new training, and internships, because my 55-year-old veteran who has an 80% rating shouldn't have an 80% rating. They should have a 10% rating and go get a job.
Yeah,
I think
you're
go
ahead, Clay.
Yeah, so whenever I looked at when I listened to the Senate hearing, that's just one little piece of the picture. All right. And I think the GAO said it best. And this is paraphrased again, but she talked about how the schedule of ratings, the VASRD, have been updated. 11 out of 15. The next 4 are well underway, with the notorious changes being mental health is a big one. Tinnitus and sleep apnea. So it's mental health, auditory, respiratory, and then neurological. And how that the VASRDs, the 15 schedules, were changed. They have been changed. The 4 are going to change medically, but they haven't been changed from a compensation perspective on loss of earnings. And what that means to me, and this is the direction I think the VA, not the VA, I would say the country is going to go at some point, because there are people who are funding studies and, testifying before the Senate and doing all these other things, that we're going to start seeing more ratings like sleep apnea that were once 50 go down to 0. And it's kind of similar to what we have now for hypertension, acne, and I think toe fungus was the big one the Washington Post brought up, right? Is that hypertension is bar none. I mean, like 99%. I'm pulling it out of my butt, by the way. I don't have the data.
Yeah,
But
unless
the
you're really
overwhelming
sick,
majority
it's
are
0%.
0%, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
The overwhelming majority of toe fungus is 0%. And honestly, every time I see that claim, I'm just like, okay, that's dumb. Like, I get it, but it's 0%. There's no earnings lost. And so we're going to see that with sleep apnea. And I think in the future, we're going to see the VA SRDs, the 15 of them, be updated from the compensation earnings loss or potential earnings loss viewpoint, not just the medical viewpoint. And I think that is the direction of not just the VA, because I'm not saying VA because like there's, depending on what admin is in charge, right? I think the entire country is going to, at some point, lose support for its veterans in a manner, I guess it depends on who you ask, in a manner that we're going to see high ratings go down to low ratings from a earnings loss potential, not just a medical lens. What are your thoughts on that? Because if someone asked me what your agenda was, and it's just coming from me alone, I would say that was the reason you testified, is to take a look at the VA SRDs, how veterans are rated, and the percentage of each disability. Would you agree with that? Would you tell me I'm stupid? I just want to hear your thoughts on that. The sleep apnea going from 50 to 0 is a great example that's happening right now.
I will answer it this way and say that I think so. There was a study a couple of years ago, it's cited in my Senate testimony, 2016, I think, that talked about the functional limitations that veterans face versus what a disability rating in the VA is. And what they discovered in the study was that the VA system, the VASRD system by itself, is alone among all federal programs. SSDI isn't this way. Workman's Comp isn't this way. No other program is as broadly defining disability as the VA system is. And so there's a whole lot of things that the VA calls a disability, or that we call conditions, that we compensate for, that we should really be treating for, in order to help veterans have a better life, even though they're living with those conditions. But what is not the case is that, I'm not advocating for the whole VA to be shut down or the whole thing to be privatized. And I see in the comments, people are like, oh, what about Project 2025? I haven't read it. I don't know anything about what it says. No clue. So the reason I testified was because I was asked to testify. I don't have an agenda here. Mm-hmm. I would like to see veterans thriving more. I'm involved in a whole bunch of different programs, including America's Warrior Partnership and some others, where that's really focused like a laser on preventing veteran suicide. I think that's all very valuable. But the step that nobody's taking, including the VA, including Cheryl Mason, the VA OIG, who I know very well, is they don't want to see fraud. The reason they're not seeing fraud is because they're covering up their faces and covering up their ears. They don't want to see it. And so the VA just doesn't do these studies. Institute of Medicine does these studies. Other people do these studies. Harvard does these studies.
So speaking of studies, right? Studies show that even after adjusting for age and other factors, veterans generally have worse health outcomes and a higher burden of multiple chronic conditions than non-veterans. These altered health trajectories suggest an erosion of the healthy soldier effect, okay, where the initial health benefits of military service are diminished by long-term service-related factors.
Totally.
Studies show that.
Yeah.
So this goes back to what you were just saying. Wow. The VA is the only one that's defining things differently, and the only one that's allowing for these different types of conditions to be considered disabling, right? Well, it's because our service members are having worse off time and getting diagnosed with things they shouldn't be getting diagnosed for at age 23 than their civilian counterpart. That's why this is there. This is why this benefits system is in place. This is why it's there.
Sentences previous to that in that same study talk about how until about 15 years ago, veterans were actually more healthy because of the healthy soldier effect. And now what's happening is veterans are less healthy. Why is that? Well, go back to incentives. If we pay veterans
20
to
years
view
of
themselves,
20 years of war,
no,
a more regimented vaccine situation.
oh boy, yeah, the
More.
vaccine.
I
I'm not going
mean,
to disagree with you on the vaccine thing. Holy crap!
there's look, we you know, and look, all I'm saying is that when we go in, we have zero control. We stand in line, we get our shots, we take our pills, we do what we're told, we move forward, we get exposed. You know, next thing you know, you're licking asbestos and snorting anthrax, right? And next thing you know, you're taking malaria pills, and next thing you know, here you are on some rotten ship. Well, maybe not you, but the Navy guys and the Marine Corps guys, right? So, all of these things contribute to this downward trend compared to our look. We all deteriorate. This is your point. Everybody deteriorates in time. We all are, but
Right,
our trajectory by studies is a little quicker.
How much is the moral responsibility of our fellow citizens? So, you know, the legal stuff, the way that the law is made, and just so people know this, I mean, it's not I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill like we all saw when we were in third grade or whatever. That's not it. What it actually is armies of lobbyists are going up there, and they're ensuring that people get reelected as long as those people will give them what they want. And in the veterans context, you have the funny hat brigade, right? The people with they've got their garrison caps, right? And they got the funny hat brigade, and the members of Congress are terrified by those people because they don't want to lose the veteran vote. And so when any reform is put in, they run it by VFW, and VFW says, Ryan Gallucci says, oh, it's too hard. And they run it by disabled American veterans. And Randy Reese in the Washington Post article says, oh yeah, sleep apnea is way worse than an amputation because somebody with an amputation can still work and CPAP people can't work. It's like, what are you talking about? It's just morally totally bankrupt. The system is morally, it's hurting veterans, and it's bad for them. And that's my main contention. The system that we have is making veterans embrace their sickest selves, and they get stuck in amber by like a bug on a prehistoric tree branch. They get stuck in amber, and they just see themselves as disabled veterans, and it's not a positive identity. It's a negative, backward-looking identity. Just like if you saw me wearing my high school letter jacket, you'd be like, "Okay, that's weird, dude. You're 50. You shouldn't be wearing a high school letter jacket." True, I shouldn't. I don't identify really as a veteran. Like when they in church, when they say, "Hey, veterans, stand up on Veterans Day," I just stay seated. You know why? Because I'm a civilian. I'm a civilian. I don't view myself in that way because I don't want to. Because it's something I used to do, not something I am now.
Right, and you can't expect everybody else to think and do what you do.
No, of course not.
I mean, that's the reality, right?
And it's totally obvious. It's 100% obvious.
Right. You are the anomaly, right? So most people don't serve, then have your situation, right? And then a high level position, right? Running the whole state's department for veteran services, right? Doing contract work, whatever you do now. Most people don't. Most people probably can't, right? So you're very fortunate. And look, I'm a big believer in positive attitude. I'm one of the secret type people, right? Like positive affirmations and all that type of stuff. So I think that all of that stuff is super great. But I've also realized in my life, my short 51 years, that not everybody's made the same. What affects me might not affect that person. And what affects that person might not affect me. Everybody has different thresholds, different bandwidths, different abilities to work with what they got. What happened to you could devastate a lot of people. Completely devastated. Living under a bridge, devastated. And there's not a damn thing any government program could do to help that person. That's just the reality. And so we have to be cognizant, I think, of that. Clay.
Yeah.
Can I just respond to that?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
100%. I'm 100% knowledgeable about the fact that, I have a great wife. I've got a great family. My wife, very early on after I got hurt, came to me and said, Daniel, I'll take care of everything. I'll take care of our bills. I'll take care of, our kid. I'll take care of all of our stuff. But the second you get well enough, you're in charge of our family. You provide for us, not me. I'm not the person who provides for us. And that was really very powerful. But not everybody has that. Most people don't have a wife as awesome as mine, right? And I'm white, and I'm highly educated, and I was an officer, and people love to make fun of officers. I was enlisted first, and I guess they forgot that part, but whatever. Yes, it's easy to make fun of the bootstrapping. The bootstrapping accusation is one that's easy to make fun of. My point is that our government systems should be set up to help the maximum number of people achieve their maximally best life. And paying them to be sick ain't it, in my view.
Right. So
I would.
So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go, Clay.
I'm gonna run through chat. So if you got something,
yeah, we got to do that. I'll do lightning round.
Okay. So first off, I want to thank everyone who joined as a member. We definitely appreciate that. We have 88 chats to go through, and it's climbing. So I'm not going to say everyone's name who joined as a member, but thank you very much. So to all three, any thoughts on the caregiver program? Lightning round. I mean, my view is when you look at specific programs like caregiver or special adapted housing, those are the most vulnerable of the population. And I think it's exactly what Jason just described, that some disabilities devastate people, where others, it kind of forces a fire on your butt to provide for your family or whatever motivation you have. Do y'all have anything on that one?
My only comment about the caregiver program is I worry that in some cases, not all, but in some cases, it's typically the wife who's the caregiver, but putting the wife in a position where she's caring for her husband in that way puts the husband in the child role and the wife in the parent role, and really can distort the marital dynamic that is the balance that's necessary in a good marriage. And I worry about that. I haven't seen any studies on it, but that's just a worry that I have.
So what's interesting, just really quick, what's interesting on that is that, for example, when the laws changed and they opened up the doorway for veterans to be able to go on to base with just a disability ID card, they could bring their caregiver with them during COVID. Right. So COVID shut down all the bases. They didn't want a lot of people going on there. So now only the veteran could get on, but they could bring their caregiver on for additional assistance, because some of these people, they can't reach the top shelf. Their wife can stand. They're stuck in a wheelchair. So the caregiver program, I think that there's legislation out there that is really focusing in on assisting the spouses and caregivers in general, even if it's not a spouse, to help them get retrained and get reevaluated, because many of these caregivers give their whole life to being a caregiver. And then it's like, that's what I've done for 10 years. Now my veteran has passed away, and now that's all I've done for 10 years. So how do I translate that into a job? So there's actually some legislation in to kind of help bridge that gap, which I'm sure Daniel would be all about, because it's about education and training and job placement and helping these people transition from caregiver roles into other things, which I think is good too. Clay,
yeah,
go.
I'm going to keep on moving. So these are just super stickers here. StreamYard doesn't show it, but all these donations, any profits are going to go to the TAPS nonprofit organization there. So Charlie, who is at American Vet, and George, thank you very much. AF Vet says honor the contract. That's definitely a VFW Title IV talking point that I'm sure they're going to iterate a lot more in the coming months. Here's a question directed at you, Daniel. Is Gade, could you share on where you see compromise, such as grandfathering, or where some of your ideas might lead to more harm than good? No one's perfect. How would you critique your ideas and views? Can you do this in like a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it super short. Anytime that we change laws for a big population like this, we have to offer a safe harbor to people who are currently receiving compensation for that thing. That's really normal. But when we tried to do that during Dole Shalala in 2007, 2008, DAV and everybody else was like, no, if there's any positive thing, it's got to go to all veterans. If it's any negative thing, it can't go to. It's like, okay, you can't have it both ways there. And then how would I critique my ideas? I mean, I understand the critique that that I have it really good, that I've got a great life, and that it seems like I'm, being pretty harsh on some of this stuff. I get it. I don't disagree with that critique.
Yeah, I'll give some people who are not of my opinion. If I were to make an argument to show exaggeration or totally unverifiable, just food for thought, you might want to look into it. I would look at secondary service connection and then secondary mental health to chronic pain. And you can look at Veterans Guardian litigation there as well.
They're the worst. They're the worst. The fact that Brian Reese, the fact that Brian Reese isn't facing a RICO, like the attorney general or somebody isn't coming after him for colluding to defraud the government is just disgusting. I mean, that whole scene is foul.
Yeah. And then I would probably also, like, if I were you, or not use someone who's not the same opinion as me, I would also argue that secondary should have a more likely than not versus an at least as likely as not. And I'm just saying that, like, if I was going to make that argument, that's how I would have presented it. And so I would probably offer that critique as well. So we have super sticker here from a quad Drazi. I know I butchered that one. Thank you very much. Beer Buddy says, why must your reform, as I'm assuming you, Daniel, rely on punitive cuts to compensation to fund employment programs rather than funding those programs separately? And I'm not a budget person at all. So.
It was just an example. There's the VA's budget this year is $400 billion. There's enough money in there to do job programs.
Yeah,
no
as
doubt.
well as fund VA disability compensation. That's a joke there. But Dick's Insider, okay, Mr. Gade, hypothetically, if you were to own a pro football team, I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't write these questions.
Dixon, I really appreciate your donation to TAP.
And why would you name it the Blue Falcons? So.
I've served veterans for 20 years. I'm not a Blue Falcon, whatever. It
was funny. I give it to him.
It was funny. It was funny.
But
I'm glad he donated to TAP just to make that comment.
He
could have said it for free, and I probably would have seen it anyway. So
So Gunnery Sergeant here donated a ton of times, just saying Marine Corps, trying to draw this out, a bunch of other stuff. So thank you very much, Gunny. All these donations go to TAPS as well. Then we have a big one here from Mark Biles. Thank you very much for that. That'll make its way over to TAPS. Magnetar. I'm going to start reading these questions before I bring them up, just so everyone knows. So you're the only one telling the truth about your injuries incurred during service. Obviously, that's a emotional driven comment there.
Look, it's an emotional topic. I get that people are emotional about it. That's fine.
Yeah, I would say for every veteran, it's if you're going to give a critique, you should back it up by arguments because it makes it a billion times better. Anyways, Jax Ripper said something that I'm definitely not putting up on the screen, but thank you for the donation. That'll make its way to TAPS there. Okay, AF Vet says VA comp is and should be for all injuries and illnesses we get while we are government property 24/7. Honor the contract. We can work or not. That's up to each veteran. That's not a question. That's a statement. But do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, if you get vitiligo while you're in military service, is it your fellow citizens' fault? No. If you get Parkinson's disease that runs in your family, is it your fellow citizens' fault? No. Could the government pay for the treatment? Absolutely. But should you get disability compensation for stuff that would have happened whether you ever joined or not? No. That's ridiculous. It's morally bankrupt. And
again, this is, it has the feeling of shaming veterans for taking advantage of the benefits that they've earned by law through service. So I don't appreciate it. And I'm just going to tell you that I don't appreciate that because these subscribers that are watching this, they may have got any one of those conditions that you've laid out and legally and honestly went through the whole process without any ounce, not even an ounce of fraud, and to be talked down to is a bit disturbing. Just want to throw that out there.
The legal and the moral are different things, Jason.
Yeah, I know, but you're painting it with a brush.
View.
You're painting it with a shameful brush. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Mark.
That's all.
For being a member.
It's all about it's about tone.
Gunnery Sergeant, thank you again for that. I tried to share a new Netflix series, Marines. I've had a ton of people tell me to watch it. I can tell you right now, I'm not watching it. Just not what I watch. Sorry. Okay. Annette Baker says you are biased against your vets there.
Yeah. Hi, Annette. Thanks for the donation.
Yeah, that's
Janice. How about Janice Victim with $99.99? Good for her. Thanks, Janice.
Yep, that one's up next.
Donation.
So Eric Prius, thank you very much. And then we have Janice Victim here, $99.99. Thank you very much for that. That's a big one. We definitely appreciate that, and I'm sure Taps is going to appreciate that as well. Also, I don't know which channel these are on. If it's TivDiv, Veterans Daily, or Veterans Info Tap, we'll make the math work later on. YouTube does take about 2 weeks. I'd probably say a week and a half to flush out the analytics on live, so it's not going to be instant. Okay, Beer Buddy. Is your true goal to change the legal definition of compensable disability rather than criticizing VSOs for following the existing laws?
Yes.
Okay, as far as what is a disability, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with that.
I just want to read these. Okay. I haven't been reading them. I said I was going to. Dr. Gade, do you personally receive VA disability compensation? Don't feel obligated to answer that. And if yes, has it robbed you of your purpose? Just if you want to say skip, I'll skip it.
No, I applied for only things that were caused by combat. That was my moral judgment. Your moral judgment might be different. And, Jason gets mad at me when I talk about moral versus legal. That's okay. Listen, you have your view. I have my view. That's totally fine.
Thank you very much again. That's your second donation, a Quadrazi. We appreciate that. We have Darren Lemon says DOD's budget for 24 was nearly $850 billion. Can't pass an audit. Is the rare cases of VA disability fraud the best to go after, seeing that estimate says it's only a fraction of a percent of payments paid out? Is this the thanks for your service?
Yeah, you know what? This is funny because I get this critique all the time because I'm not talking about SSDI. I'm not talking about SNAP. I'm not talking about illegal immigrants. I'm not talking about paying Israel for all the billions and billions that we give them every year. I'm not talking about the money we spent in Ukraine. I'm not talking about how illegal and immoral the war in Iraq was. Obviously, all of those.
We love beef.
Obviously, all of those things are true, right? There's a whole bunch of waste in the federal government. It just happens that this is the area in which I am a actual expert. So this is the one I talk about.
All right. Magnetar says, sounds like to me, Gade is saying only combat vets with intense injuries should file. I would agree with that statement on this one. That's what it sounds like. Next, please have Gade comment on the VA underpaying vets by $84 million. I'm curious as to what that's referencing about.
I don't know what that's referencing either. I'm not saying only combat vets. I've never said only combat vets. What I am talking about is things that were caused by service. If you fall off a truck and get paralyzed at Camp Lejeune, if you get hurt at Lejeune by falling off a truck and you're training for war, you should get compensated for that. No doubt about it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the vitiligo and the sleep apnea. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. Okay. Mark Biles, thank you. That's like your third time, I think.
Yeah, Mark's on a roll here.
That. Yeah. DK Guns. Okay. Mr. Gade, I was there also in 04-05 with First Cav and in Fallujah. I didn't get blown up like yourself, but I came back not the same person, which took a toll on my family. I get what I deserve from the VA without feeling guilty. Not a question, that's a statement, but
I hope that Mr. Guns or DK Guns, Mr. or Mrs. Guns is getting also mental and physical health care from the VA. so as to live a productive and meaningful life.
All right, Martin, thank you for the membership. Appreciate that one. We have Gunny again, says, sir, watch the Netflix series. I'm not going to have it, to be honest with you. We aren't the best, but we fight for each other. Okay. Martin, thank you very much. We have a huge one here from Colton Wortman. So when I broke my back, shoulder, right knee, that's a lot. I'm going to assume airborne here. I couldn't walk in the last 8 days. Do I need to bring my wife into the doctor's office as a witness? Because it's insane. I mean, I definitely have comments on this one, but go ahead.
You guys are the experts on who to bring to a comp and pen exam. I'm not sure what this is referring to.
Yeah,
but that's $100 donation to TAP. That's
yeah,
awesome.
It is awesome. I will say, for major injury, like this isn't strain. We're not talking about knee strain or whatever. We're talking about breaking your back, your shoulder, and your right knee. I'm going to assume that's from airborne. If that's the case, that's a super easy claim, and a witness statement, a buddy statement, a lay statement, whatever you want to call it, isn't going to do anything because the criteria for musculoskeletal conditions like these are either going to be prescribed bed rest, which is not common, or range of motion. So a witness is not going to, it's literally going to do nothing. So, all right, Gunny says, veterans will always be here. Awesome. Yep. All right, we definitely appreciate all the donations, Gunny. So thank you very much. Okay.
Magnetar's mad at me now.
Yeah, I know. I saw his name and I was like, let me click that. Gade, by your logic, no one.
I can't kick rocks with that leg, Magnetar, because it doesn't exist. It went in the incinerator 20 years ago. That's probably fine.
All right. Okay. Colton Wortman. So this is on top of this. Okay. So thank you very much, Colton. I'm sure TAPS is definitely going to appreciate that. Says, I wake up every morning at 2 a.m. I stretch and I can feel my lower spine pop into place. I'm 30. I think age is a huge factor that a lot of people overlook. And I still take about 3,500 milligrams of any type of off-the-shelf painkiller plus alcohol, plus I'm hard-headed. Healthcare, dude. That's what I got to say about that. I mean, I'm sure Daniel's on the same opinion on that. All right, Al, thank you very much for that. 141 FE, appreciate it. Okay, so Magnetar again says, Gade, it seems to me you're trying to divert responsibility from the VA back to the vet. I'm going to add a little bit to that one. It's not something that we talked about a lot, but there's major players in a VA claim. There's the veteran submitting the claim. And once that claim's submitted, that's it. Then it's claims processors, they're a major player. And then another major player is a CMP examiner. And I think that's what he's referring to, where the VA they are the ones who adjudicate the claim, not the veteran. And so I assume that's what he's referring to, if you want to comment on that one.
Yeah, I don't think the government should be responsible for your outcomes. I think you're responsible for your outcomes. Yeah, but sure, but that's not how the VA claim works, right? And I would probably argue. Are we talking about Magnetar's? Are we talking about Magnetar's statement right here? Yeah, because I assume he's talking about putting the blame on the vet. I think he's talking about my Adam and Eve example, where I'm like, don't divert responsibility. I think that's what he's talking about. But yeah, I think that you ought to be thinking that your life is your responsibility and doing everything you can to make your life as meaningful as you can. Yeah. All right. So we have
and I agree with that, by the way. Do everything you can to make your life meaningful and get the treatment you need. And by the way, don't let anybody shame you from filing for any sort of disability claim that you potentially have. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to help you have a better life. It's going to help you with your finances. It's going to help you with your medical treatment. It's going to help you with your education treatment, educational programs. You could apply for VRNE. There's a lot of things out there, especially to the 70% that are not service connected. Take a look at your service treatment records and see if you have anything that would be service connectable.
We have a ton of chats, just so you know. How were you able to speak about all vets in the hearing? I can tell you from my comments whenever I was watching the hearing live, that was a common feeling among veterans, is that this guy doesn't speak for us. I assume that's what he's referring to. Do you want to comment on that?
No, I'm speaking to my lived experience and 20 years of research and work in the field. I guess I'm not speaking for Gunnery Sergeant there. That's okay.
Donald, so we did answer this one, opinion on the PACT Act. It's, can you very quickly explain your position on the PACT Act about diagnosis and what is the actual cause and all that?
I think the PACT Act was overbroad and rushed into law because of President Biden's personal connection with respect to his son. And with respect to his son did not die of brain cancer because of burn pits. When he deployed, he was the Attorney General of Delaware. And if anybody thinks that the Army is going to put the Attorney General of Delaware in the plume of a burn pit, they're insane. He wasn't burning wag bags. He wasn't doing any of that. He died because he got glioblastoma, which happens to some people. And so the PACT Act is overbroad. And I think in later years, we're going to see a lot of studies that show that, but it's new and that's kind of how it is.
That's a bomb right there. Okay, so Mark Biles again this is like your sixth one, I think, says I still get mental health therapy and I didn't stop. I don't do well without my mental health therapy. I still get mental health therapy and I didn't stop. I don't do well with my mental health therapy.
Yeah, he just pasted it in there. I'm glad if he's getting the care he needs. That's really positive, and I hope he gets better.
Yeah. I'm not going to read that one. Thank you, Magnetar.
No, Magnetar got mad at me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he did.
That's fine.
Colton Warren, again, this is your third big one here. Says, until you literally cannot work and the VA says no, and we have to go to college, there's a reason why veterans sign a contract. Promises were made. Promises not kept without proof that the veteran has to provide. I actually don't agree with that. I think the system does work. I think the VA disability compensation system, although it gets a lot of flack from the internet, especially YouTubers, I'm one of them, the system does work. And in fact, if it didn't work, 6 million veterans wouldn't be service connected. I think veterans need to take more responsibility on the front end submission of their claim. Personally, that's my thoughts. Do you have any thoughts on that? Okay. We're rolling. We were training and hardening ourselves against the bad things after separation. The shell weakens and the bad things reveal themselves. Okay, thanks for sharing. We definitely appreciate that one. Eric, thank you for that. We have Empire's Colton again. This guy's crazy. Thank you for all the donations. Okay. Who invited Gade to speak at the committee? Where's the his business located? Is it the recipient of government contracts? I understand you're not obligated to answer that one, so say skip if you want. If not,
no, that one's fine. So the Senate staff invited me, and I guess the chairman greenlighted me being invited, knowing my position on this. The headquarters of our company is in Huntsville, Alabama, and we have a variety of chem bio defense contracts with the Army, Navy, and Air Force.
All right.
None of them relying on service disabled veteran status, by the way.
Lori, thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. She's one of our moderators. Tim says, case in point, why Mustangs are better. I have so many officer jokes that I did not say a single one for your sake. So,
dude, I've got 100 of them myself.
Right. I've never trusted. There we go. Solid. Okay. Beer Buddy says, how do you reconcile criticizing tinnitus with the $6 billion 3M settlement, which confirms defective military earplugs caused widespread service-connected damage? It's a good question. I think.
I mean, tinnitus is not a disability; it's a condition. I think you should get treated for it if they ever come up with a treatment for it. I think there's other ways to cope with it. I don't think you should go around with disabled veteran license plates, parking in disabled veteran spaces for your ears ringing. That seems silly to me. And
Yeah,
by the way,
these
my
might
ears
be
ring.
like
My ears ring
testimony
all the time, and I get it. I
Yeah,
understand. I
they're
didn't file
probably
for it
rated
because I'm
for
not
other
gonna.
things if they have the license plate, not just tonight.
Maybe.
For sure. Okay.
Well, in California, you just have to have a disability rating. It doesn't have to be 100%.
No, you do. You have to be 100%.
Not in California, you don't.
Yeah, you do. Unless they changed it last year.
I think I saw
But it's
that.
fine.
Anyway.
Okay. I paid into my GI
I could be
Bill.
wrong.
I
You're
haven't
right.
used it with what happened to it. Yeah, I think it's don't quote me on this, January of 2011, within that time frame, you either have the forever GI Bill or you don't. And that is the policies and laws in place. And there's no way getting around that. Okay. In the win, thank you for this big donation. We definitely appreciate it. Says, thank you for your service, sir. My question to you is, does your morals trump a lawful and administrative system that has been put in place to compensate young people who sacrifice their bodies, minds, friends, and families for this country?
No, definitely not. My point is that as we reform any legal system, we have to keep an eye on what the moral purpose of it is. And I think that the VA system has drifted far from its appropriate moral purpose.
Okay. King's World. I'm trying to go real fast here, guys. $95 billion in foreign aid is morally better than taking care of veterans. And these are emotionally, we get it, right? Like, people got really upset at Argentine beef. Are there not better fights you could be voicing? You lost your leg. Why not try to save more legs, Gade?
I don't want us to fight any more meaningless, stupid wars either. I think the war in Iraq was a disaster, and the war in Afghanistan barely any better. And we ought to do a lot. We ought to make much smarter decisions with our soldiers before we and sailors and airmen and Marines before we put them in harm's way. But that's the Congress needs to seize back its authority from the executive, no doubt about it. And wars should be declared before we send young kids to die in the mud. So I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Or shoot them out of the ocean with boats when they're on boats. Anyways, Coastliner says, one man's voice and opinions, the law says otherwise, are as pertaining to 38 CFR Part 4, which is decades old. The thing on that one, Coastliner, that's the argument that GAO was making, is that it is old, and that's the biggest potential for exaggeration. So I would probably just keep that to myself, to be honest with you. Numbers Guys 84, thank you for being a member. Appreciate it. Let me just read this one real quick.
Yeah, that's the one about illegally firing people. I don't know who my friends
Gade,
are.
you brought up employment, but your friends want to illegally fire people. I mean, you don't have to
talking
comment.
about the Trump administration. I'm not even in the administration, so I don't know.
Okay, so exactly the same guy said, ED, why submit claims, just kick rocks. Okay, whatever. Here we go. George Batista says, I think the government should stop paying for illegals in America and giving foreign aid country before cutting pay for the 1% of the population that serve.
I'm in violent agreement with George on that.
Okay, this one seems reasonable. And by reasonable, I mean no bad words. So Lieutenant Colonel Gade says, I disagree with you regarding this topic, but I sincerely respect you for coming here and hearing our side. I would echo that, because I know you knowingly walked into opposition. And so, we're definitely happy to have you here.
Dude, I've been shot by a rocket. I've been blown up by a bomb. Words are not violence. It's fine. We can disagree. We can disagree even in a heated way. And, Jason disagreed with me in kind of a heated way, and that's totally okay. I get it. I understand. It's fine.
King's World said it's morally sound to entice poor 18-year-olds with money and honor to fight for wars. Dude, you're
no, it's not. Right, King's World, you're right. It's not morally good.
Yeah. That's the Afghan, the whole GWAT thing kind of gets under my skin as well. He wants his morals to be all of our laws, by the way. Okay. I'm not going to try to, Maverick Poet. All right. Only third-party doctor can write a legit DBQ and Nexus Letter. VA docs won't do it because of VA admin. It's a little more than that. You also need buddy letters with legit wording. No, you don't. This is all legally binding and a federal crime if fraud for anyone caught lying. That part true. All right. I have a question for you. What is your opinion on third-party legitimate medical providers writing opinions to Service Connect disabilities?
There's some things that are inherently governmental functions. For example, I would be really worried about a private military contractor getting paid by the government to go bear arms in a foreign country and kill foreign people, because that's an inherently government function, right? I also think that for that same reason, or for a similar reason, that the VA should have its own staff doing those as much as possible, because people like Brian Reese and VA Claims Insider have their own little stable of medical experts that for a fee will give you a DBQ that says whatever the heck you want it to say, and it supports the claim package that then goes and gets Brian Reese and VA Claims Insider paid millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars every year. And it's just, it's gross. And the incentive to lie, I think, is far too high. And that's probably an area where the incentives are truly, truly, and obviously out of whack.
Are you, I want to clarify something. Are you in favor of contracted CMP exams to give the opinions, or are you in favor of the VHA staff completing the opinion?
Yeah, so the problem is the VA doesn't have the people for it, and government employees are much more expensive than contractors. So it's a tough problem to solve, and I don't know that I have a strong opinion on how to solve it. Yeah.
Okay. The issue is a lot of CMP examiners are NPs, or they're extremely underqualified to give the opinion. That's that side. But then you have the claim company side that partner with Nexus Letter companies. I agree with you on that. Wholeheartedly, I do. But then you do have legitimate physicians writing legitimate opinions backed by the veterans' evidence. And so the argument's not cookie cutter. All right, Clay, can you please ask him who testified? We definitely answered that one, Dixon. Thank you for that. Got that one. Got it. David Swanson, appreciate it. AF Vet Trump said the same thing about P25 as Gade, word for word. I don't know about it. Never read it. LMAO.
Well, his people wrote it, but I don't have any people, and they didn't write anything. I did look. I thought I looked through it years ago, like when it first came out, to see if it said anything about veterans, and I didn't see anything at that time, so I didn't read any further because I was only caring about the veteran stuff. But I didn't see anything about it. I don't know.
Yeah, he's definitely referring to the Agent Orange comment there, because that is literally right out of the book of P25. Any vet needing help submitting a VA claim can message me for help. We're just going to skip this guy. Thank you for donating, though. Also, you're a loser. King's World says he doesn't see himself as a veteran. That explains it all.
Can I comment on that really quick?
Absolutely.
So we all have many identities. At any one time, we all have many identities. And so my identities: I'm a husband. I'm a father. I own a business. I do jujitsu. I'm a Christian. I should have listed that one first. There's like 8 different identities, and every identity is important in certain circumstances. I just don't view the veteran's identity as being one that's particularly valuable in most circumstances, and so I don't embrace it. It's not significant to me during most of my life. I've got other things to do other than dream about the good old days and wish I was still in the Army.
All right, I'm going to skip OLPs there because he uses a bad word, and we don't use bad words here. Let's cut waste, not veterans' benefits. Here's my compromise. In wasteful foreign aid, regime change wars, a bunch of stuff that's not VA related. Not VA compensation, supporting our veterans. Let's just smart policy. It's our moral duty.
Yes, supporting our veterans the right way is our moral duty. My argument is that helping them thrive, getting them health care, getting them jobs is a morally right way to do it. Paying them to be sick, I've got real moral qualms with, as you've heard.
Luis says, tell everyone how great you are. Okay. May be not says, the VA says my husband who has ALS doesn't need a TENS wipes because they aren't medically necessary. Explain to me how that makes sense. There's no way we can comment on the healthcare situation of your spouse. that might be a conversation you want to go have with an accredited service officer, one, or just speak frankly to the healthcare provider and just have that conversation. It's definitely not YouTube's not the place for that. Can you ask
Maverick
him?
Poet guy is just trying to drum up business for himself, so you can probably skip that one. Oh, this one here.
Yeah. Can you ask him why I'm asking you, why does he want to remove any rating below 60%? That was a huge statement you made during the testimony, by the way. My neuropathy is a disability, but because it's not 60%, it has to be removed.
My point in that part of the testimony was that if we took the minor disabilities, however defined, and rerouted that to better, more productive uses like job placement and all of those things, then veterans would have better lives. It doesn't matter to me whether it's 60 or 30 or 100. I don't care. But if we're going to, the money is already in the system to do the right thing was my point.
Yeah. The man, I don't really want to go down that hole because we don't have time, but I think it matters for those who are 60% and below. And I think they took it. I think they took it personally, and I think they're justified in doing so. Just a Fett, thank you very much for the memberships. We definitely appreciate it. Yeah, I'll skip that one. So Steve Lay, thank you very much. JK, thank you very much. Bishop, thank you very much. Lieutenant Colonel Gade, excuse me. Did you ever commend the 980? I
did not ever command any engineer unit of any kind. And on the MedBoard thing, I'm not sure what we're talking about here. I actually went through MedBoard and applied to stay on active duty, and they did a assessment and determined that I could stay on active duty. So that's how I stayed. It was after MedBoard.
I know no one messed with you when you were active with one leg. I know that for a fact.
Well,
okay.
There was a lot of jokes, though. Trust me.
Scott, thank you very much. Ray Rev Nation said, I've seen so many scam the VA. Daniel's right. Look at that. You got someone in your corner. You should hold on to him very tightly.
There's one.
It's a legal contract and both parties fulfilling it. That's something I was telling my viewers leading up to this, is that this is my channel and Jason's channel and then our channel. It's like an echo chamber in here. So obviously you're in enemy territory, but if we flip the script, it would be the complete opposite. So keep that in mind. All right. Tell him, Jason. Jason, you were definitely giving it to him here. Let me just read. Okay. What I'm getting from this is that VSOs must be trained properly. They don't have the funding to do that. That's a whole other separate. Jason will talk. Jason's really passionate on misappropriated funds for VSOs. To not embellish and only rate what is diagnosed and what's documented, I'd be happy with just getting proper ratings. Okay, so a neuro condition like MS that medically retires, you shouldn't be compensated. I'm going to skip that one there. You can't cherry pick morality. No, you cannot. I'm sure the billionaire friends at DC have morals. Kicking through this. Michelle, thank you very much. Guardian, thank you. We're almost to the end here. Lieutenant Colonel, did you ever? Oh, we got that one. A second donation. Thank you very much. He says, please come back again.
I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to come back.
Illness that do not typically occur at young ages, but people in the military have those illnesses at much younger age. Are you saying due to not being in combat, it's not compensated?
We have to make individual assessments of all this stuff. Right now, the VA applies a super broad brush, and there's a lot of things that are lifestyle and genetic conditions that the VA compensates for. My view is that that's not the role of the VA. Others have a different view.
Michael Connell never had sleep apnea until after doing burn pits. I'm curious if this is my friend. I will ask him later on. That's another thing about the PACT Act is the PACT Act, in a way, forced people to claim the benefits that they didn't know that they could have gotten in the first place. Stephen, thank you very much. If VA comp is cut, impact on future recruitment. That's a big one. I think that goes into your argument as well as how veterans are working or how veterans are seen by the civilian populace after service.
If people see veterans thriving in society, they're more likely to send their kids into that machine. If they see every veteran as if they think that their son, daughter, or whatever is going to get raped, poisoned, or blown up when they're in service, then they're not going to send their kids. So why don't we do better about not poisoning, raping, and blowing up our people, and a good job of taking care of them and getting them employment afterwards so they don't have to be dependent on the government? It doesn't seem that controversial of an opinion.
Just want to know that
there is the other side of that, though, where you're going to have veterans. Typically, veterans' children are the ones that join. There's more generational military. So you're going to have many people going, don't join because the benefits aren't there for you. They're not going to take care of you the way that I was taken care of. And so you're going to have that mindset. So it's going to be at a detriment, I believe.
That's an interesting point. I can see that point, Jason.
Fig Ramsey is basically saying that there's thousands of brothers and sisters who aren't rated at all. It's about 70% that have zero relationship with the VA. So there's a big figure there. George, thank you very much. He lied about not reading Project 2025.
I'm going to go read it now and see if I agree with it or not, but I've never read it. 641
is VHA, and then you'll find VBA below that one.
What page?
641.
All right. Yeah. Well, it's 641 pages. Why would I read that? That's crazy. Anyway, I believe me or not, but I didn't read it.
Pay for Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, etc. Why shouldn't the government and taxpayers pay for the 1% that raised their hand, honored the oath? Title 4 there. Okay. What value do you consider fair for the loss of life expectancy because of cancer I got because of chemical exposure? I probably won't get to enjoy watching my grandchildren grow up because of it. Talking about the extreme exposures and cancers there that are rare, but under the PACT Act.
Yep.
Shedding the gnar. I'm looking for big questions here. Okay. If the solution was as simple as get rid of compensation and just get treated, don't you think the VA would have already done that?
Oh, because every bureaucracy exists to protect itself. It's the same reason they're not interested in uncovering fraud, and the reason they prohibit VSRs. Get this, they prohibit VSRs from going on somebody's Facebook page when they say they're housebound, and they go on their Facebook page and you see them out partying. It's like, well, you're not housebound if you're out partying. Hello. But the VSRs aren't allowed to say, actually, I Googled this guy and he's an athlete. He's a triathlete. He's not housebound. They're not allowed to do that. So there's tons of hear no evil, see no evil inside the VA.
This one's a gotcha question. So just a heads up here. Dr. Gade, if a MST, which is military sexual trauma incident, involves a civilian rather than another service member, and it occurred off duty during the weekend, that's probably the biggest aspect here. Is your opinion that it is immoral for the vet to file the MST claim?
Is this? I don't really understand the question. Is it like the person got attacked by a civilian? Is that?
Let's just say that they were off duty on a weekend. And
they got assaulted by a
sexual trauma, or they experienced a sexual trauma during off-duty hours.
Even in cases of sexual trauma, we know that the post-traumatic stress from that does not necessarily have to be a permanently disabling condition. There's tons of studies about this. There's lots and lots and lots of people who've experienced that, and with the proper help, has gotten better.
But the question though, it isn't really that. It's a little deeper than that. It's referring back to how your stance is only if it's caused by your military service. So this was not another military member that caused the sexual trauma. This was a civilian that caused it. So it's not military related. Mm-hmm. It just happened during your active duty time on a weekend out in wherever you were.
Boy, that's a really tough policy question.
Yeah, dude, I would not be you. I would not want to be you right now.
No, I don't. I don't think. I don't think that whatever the current policy is, which I think would be that this person can file a claim and that's fine. I think that's probably the morally justifiable position as I look at that question.
Yeah.
Happened during service.
So then it brings into the question all the other things that could potentially fall into that realm of, well, the military didn't cause that.
Yeah.
But it happened to you. So now you have to, that opens the doorway to all the other ones.
I guess a misconduct question would be relevant here. You know, if you fall out of a car because you're high on cocaine and you get hurt, should you get paid? Probably not. If you're doing something illegal anyway and something bad happens to you, you probably shouldn't get paid. But this sounds like a case where somebody's a victim and they happen to be on active duty and they become a victim of a terrible crime. Should we take care of them? Absolutely, we should take care of them. I think treatment first. I think treatment before compensation is really important. But yes, we should treat this person. That's a great question.
So my question to you is, even in your situation with loss of limb, you can arguably say that you are well adjusted and your treatment is good. You've adjusted fine. You're earning a great income. You're employing other people. You seem like you have the wherewithal. You're not. I'm assuming that you're not, depressed and having all kinds of other issues. So, I mean, why are you receiving disability compensation? Is it because you lost your leg and simply because it's gone? Because you're functioning without it. Fine.
Yeah,
do you have to have your leg?
Yeah, we talked about this earlier when we talked about the purpose of, disability compensation. Your disability doesn't go away just because you're earning more money. So, that's the Richard Starr question that we talked about it sort of towards the beginning. It's conceptually similar to me, at least.
Yeah. So I guess
slippery slope.
So I think that really it's not the aspect of incentivizing people with money to not work or to be sick. It's compensating them for the disease or illness or injury that they incurred during their time in service and recognizing that. And then it comes to the fact of just making sure that we do our best from a government perspective to educate and train and help with job placements and so forth.
Yeah,
anyway,
we can do a lot better in that. We can do a lot better in that regard, no doubt about it.
We're almost to the bottom here, but they keep.
Oh, thank goodness.
So don't worry, we're almost there. What qualifications make Mr. Gade the moral authority for my experience in the military? That's you can't answer that one. Q Bono, if Redstone contracted lower DoD war tax. What?
So that Qui Bono is Latin for who benefits. And my company is just outside of Redstone Arsenal in Alabama.
That's a shot at you.
I think so. I mean, no surprise because of the nature of this conversation, but which is totally cool. But lower DoD war tax. Yeah, our contracts are Department of Defense contracts. So if we had less wars, that would hurt my company, and I would be fine with that. I don't want more wars. I don't want anybody to have to go through what a lot of people have gone through.
Ali G says, who needs civilian haters when you got guys like this? Okay. Emily Rose, argument to restore all expired GI Bill benefits.
Yeah.
We raised a lot of money for TAP on this.
I think
we raised a lot of money for TAP.
This is crazy.
I'm saying like $2 or $3 grand probably.
Carl Allen, thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. I got PTSD during my commission. Never worked as a nurse again. Never given up my job. Why can't I get help? Been 100% since 1992. I don't know what you mean by why can't you get help, but if you're rated by the VA, that would be my first stop, assuming you've already done that. There's also private insurance options out there, but just depends on what you mean by mental health help. It's not the same for everyone. How can you stand against your own? Okay. Dave Cecil mentioned that former wars and the veterans getting better. How do you reconcile that it's different war for a different time? Combat vet blown up many times. Government should accept. I'm just confused on that one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't understand that one either. It's fine.
Okay, here's a question for you. What's your stance on respiratory issues that come up within a year after service and has been chronic for many years before the PACT Act came out, revealing they were exposed to toxic substances in a war zone?
Jason, I got a question for you. When somebody goes in for a PACT Act related DBQ or comp and pen exam, are they ever asked if they smoked?
I don't know. Not sure.
Like a lot of this
When you
bronchial
look at
stuff,
asthma,
I'm like, if you smoked in the military and like, I don't know, whatever.
I don't know. I mean, you could also say like, look at George Burns, man. You know, he smoked 1,000 cigars a day, and look, you know how long he lived, and you know, so you know, I don't know. And the reason why you're asking is because it's as a presumptive. So it's like all rules go out the window when it's a presumptive versus trying to get direct connection. And you know, here's the thing, and I know you get this. I totally know that you understand and you get it. The larger the program or the body is, the more latitude you have to give to get everything to kind of fit. And it could just be, you know, like, look, we're just going to have to throw it against the wall and be like, who cares? You know, and some people are just going to be smokers that have it. Thank God the smoking rate has decreased over the past, you know, however many decades. But you know, it's a funny thing because I started smoking in the Marine Corps. I never smoked before, started smoking in the Marine Corps. And then I quit thanks to my wife. She got me to quit. And man, that was the hardest thing I ever did was quit smoking. Don't ever smoke, to those of you out there if you don't. Anyway.
Dude,
back to you.
Quitting opiates after I'd been on IV opiates for 8 months was hard.
I could imagine. Yeah. Oh my God.
It's not great.
They do ask, the CMP examiner will ask, but it's not the nexus given is a nexus. It's presumptive in nature, not medical in nature. So it doesn't have the same impact that you think. Bobby D says opinions are like buttholes. Everyone has one. Okay. Thank you for donating. We appreciate it. Who will determine means testing fairness when not all veteran skills are the same? Translate specific jobs that cause Coca-Cola. Means testing isn't, that is a Russell Vogt type deal, not a Daniel Gade type deal. So I think you're asking the wrong people the right question. Treatment won't help homelessness.
That is completely untrue.
We'll show this one from Maverick Poet here. It is a big donation, so we appreciate that. By legit buddy letter, the buddy must write specifically about how the vet, it must reference quality of life, impact, have they seen? Yeah, so I will tell you this, dude, and I'm totally going to throw a shot at Maverick Poet here. Anyone who is really slamming buddy letters probably don't know what they're talking about. Okay, and I'll just leave it at that when it comes to buddy letters, dude. We're almost at the bottom. Just hang in there. He has an opinion of vets, just causing American people to think differently of us. I have multiple doctorate degrees. You can find studies on anything that can support you. I mean, do you want to comment on that? I don't have a PhD, so it's not for me.
I mean, you can find studies on whatever you want, but I have decades of experience in this field, so I'm not sure what that person's talking about.
Gade, you speak as if you're a SME, a subject matter expert on mental health, without matching creds. I ask, are you only able to answer these questions using morality, or can you bring empirical evidence to the table? I think that's in reference to like a medical argument.
Yeah, if you email, I don't know if they can contact you, but if that person emails you and you can give them my email address, I'll send them a copy of of this book, Wounding Warriors, that is heavily footnoted and talks about all the studies that you can possibly imagine. I'll just send you a copy. That's fine.
I was going to say, you can tell everyone your email, but then again, I would not do that. And so I take back that recommendation because you're just going to get,
look, I don't, it's fine. I don't care. You know, people say mean things and whatever. Doesn't matter.
We signed contract, aiding breach contract moral. Okay. we're almost to the bottom here, guys. I feel morally obligated to read questions that people donated. And so we're just going to get through these. What jobs would be fitting? And are there 6 million spots open for veterans to fill them? That can be done with injury, job training, without jobs that pay a livable wage is just gaslighting. I think it's a good factor, to think about. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a big economy, and we ought to put our training dollars towards places where people can, earn meaningful income. One of the richest guys I know is a dude who, when he wants to go someplace and he gets in his private jet and goes, and he doesn't even have a college degree, and he started out in commercial installation. So yeah, you can make a life out of yourself if you look at what you need. Stephen Atkinson is mad. He said he got ignored last time he's going to donate. Sorry, Stephen.
I'll go back up here in a second. You said Stephen Atkinson. All right. Yeah. How can you determine what is a lifestyle genetic factor versus what is caused by service? If you go in with nothing and come out with something, how is that not the military fault based on lifestyle? What are your thoughts there? I'm going to look for.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things. So there's a GAO did a study in 1989 talking about various lifestyle conditions that the VA compensates for. And at that time, they were very skeptical of it. It's easy to tell in some cases what's a lifestyle condition or genetic condition and what is not. In some cases, it's a little harder to tell. So that's a medically determined thing that medical people should do.
I found Steven. Sorry about that. There's 165 super chats. So if I skipped one, sorry. I've been fighting for 19 plus years for my disability benefits, and I'm still fighting for injuries sustained in the Army. Where's the morality of the VA or the DOD? That's a gotcha one.
That's a great question. Yep. Sometimes bureaucracies are terrible, no doubt about it.
Correct.
And
sometimes
the DOD is not primarily in the moral space. They're more in the space of killing people and breaking their stuff, and that's often immoral.
I always, anytime this comes up from veterans, I always spin it back and just look at the evidentiary criteria of the claim. And so if you were denied, why were you denied? And do you have the evidence to combat the denial? Because little fact, and people get really mad when I say this, not every claim veterans submit is caused by military service, and they're rightfully denied. So that's definitely on the table, right? Not every problem with veterans should be service connected because the evidence says it's not. Let's go. I think we're here. Scott Smith, thank you very much. No one is talking about older veterans who are now suffering from their service connected conditions. I would like to hear what Mr. Gade has to say to the older veterans 65 plus.
Thank you for your service. I hope you get the treatment you need.
Yeah, it's difficult. I will say this to the older veterans, the criteria of chronic, current, persistent disability really, really takes them down the denial road, because who goes to medical over the past 40 years for something, right? I Am Ministry says, I want a clear answer on people that are already rated at 5, 10, 20. I'll answer this one. This is a VA question. Yeah, so 5 years is rated as static. If it's pre-5 years, it basically means nothing. 10 years is if it's service connected, you're good. Jason is back. You're good to go there. 20 years is your rating is finally protected, right? Given the absence of fraud. The grandfather clause is in 38 CFR. I think it's 319. Any changes to the VA SRD like sleep apnea, you will not be affected. So I hope that answers your question there. Shredding the Gnar, I love that name, says, what is owed to our brothers and sisters in arms who, after 20 years of war, PTSD, and wounds, reach the point of ending their lives, whether they fought on the front lines or served in support? I mean, what's owed?
I mean, the argument isn't do we owe them something. The argument is the help we're currently providing helping or hurting? The help we're currently providing helping or hurting? And the VA, the suicide rate amongst veterans hasn't changed despite the billions and billions and billions of dollars we've spent on suicide prevention. And I think part of the reason for that is because we're missing something really important in terms of human thriving, and that's employment. We don't do a good job of it, and people get stuck, and then stuck people are dangerous to themselves often. It's a real problem.
Janus Victim, that's your second big donation. We definitely appreciate that. Please help change the name disability. I think I would prefer service connected compensation personally. Mandrell says there's like 10 more guys. I used to work for VA Claims Insider during its early days, but I left when I saw all of the fraud. I know from experience that Brian Reese is not that cool. Fraud is he's in litigation right now with the state of Texas. So we'll kind of have to just watch how that flows out, as well as Veterans Guardian. Dr. Gade, I agree with Jason. Tone is the real issue. From basic to discharge, I was told seeking help meant weakness. I'm a combat vet who struggled alone for decades until friends urged me to claim to earn benefits. We must define disabilities versus making vets whole. What do you got? Also, thanks, Robe, for donating.
That's a nice donation. Thanks for doing that. But I don't really see the question here.
Yeah, I think he just wants to be heard. So, Robe, you were definitely heard. We definitely appreciate that. All right. Ron says thoughts on Rudisill GI Bill ruling. Are you tracking on Rudisill? Yeah. So basically, if you serve you have the GI Bill for 36 months and the Montgomery for additional.
Oh, I didn't know that was. I didn't know that's what it's called. Yeah, I think I qualify for both, but
I used that.
The Army already got me educated, so I'm fine. Probably.
Yeah, I used it for my master's, but there's some sticky stuff happening with the VA about it that we'll just have to wait and see. All right, please answer this. Where's your push to restore expired GI Bill benefits so we can get back to work?
Point me in the right direction, Emily. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Help me understand what you're talking about, and I will be happy to put some energy into that.
I think it was the Trump administration first time around that signed the backdated order for January of 2011. Don't quote me on that, but it's something similar to that. If I rent a car from Enterprise and total it, I owe Enterprise money for causing that damage. That is the exact same logic behind VA compensation. Good analogy there. Okay. Okay. We're going to end it. I'm going to read 5 more. Every time we read 10 more pop up. That's what's happening, just so everyone knows.
Put a time limit on it. No more after like 6:48 p.m.
Yeah, so I just want to tell everyone thank you for donating. Okay, the profits from this will go to TAPS, and you can go to taps.org to kind of look at what everyone's money is going to. But will you take away compensation for major depressive disorder? I've seen people who
I didn't know what MDD was
for years, and they're still having issues about suicide. Treatment only doesn't help combat homelessness.
Mental health conditions, we ought to be focusing on treatment before we label somebody permanently and totally disabled. The message that you get if you have major depressive disorder, and you get a permanent and total disability compensation, the message that you're getting from the government is that you are permanently broken, and that sets a incredibly low expectation of improvement. And I think our systems should be stacked towards expectation for improvement.
A very, very small percentage of individuals have a permanent designation on their disability compensation. It's a very small percentage. In fact, the vast majority are not permanent. Just want to throw that out there.
Let's end it here because like 30 more chats just popped up, just in case anyone's wondering. And I have to go upstairs to my kids. All right.
Perfect.
So
you guys, if you want to ever do this again, I thought this was really fun. We raised a bunch of money for a good cause. We talked about some important stuff. We agreed on some stuff. We disagreed on some stuff. If you want to do it again, let's do it again. That was fun.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely be in contact. I do want to appreciate you, Daniel Gade, although I completely disagree with you with like 90% of everything we talked about. It does, just to be frank about it, it does take balls to go into the enemy's territory and just get slammed, especially in the comments. I don't know if you were reading all the comments, but they weren't all,
No, it wasn't.
they weren't all happy go lucky. We'll just say
I think
that.
it was Joe Rogan who says he always says don't ever read the comments. I don't care about the comments. Like, here's the thing: you throw a stone into a pack of dogs, the one that yelps is the one that got hit. So if somebody hears me say,
I'm careful with saying that too.
look, I don't care, because if somebody's receiving compensation for something that they deep down know they shouldn't be receiving compensation for, or it's not a real disability, or they're scammed the system, of course they're going to be mad. Of course they are. Fraud. And that's fine. That's fine. If you're mad at me, that's fine. It's cool. No problem.
Yeah, there's fraud by the legal standard, and then I would not lump that in with fraud versus one's moral standard. And I think they're very separate. There's fraud by law, and then if you follow the law and you're correctly compensated via direct, secondary, TERA, MUCMI, presumptive, then that's it.
Yeah.
There's no argument, right?
You can go to sleep at night.
Yeah, that's all I have to say. Jason, do you want to say something, and then we'll just give it to Daniel Gade? 30 seconds. You can plug whatever you want. That's okay. Take it away, Jason.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, thank you again for making it on. We do appreciate you so very much. And, it is definitely, a lot of disagreeing, but it's understanding. And I think that at the end of the day, I'll throw this out there. I think that your heart is in the right place. And I think that there is a there somewhere. Personally, I think you got to swim way further upstream. And some of this stuff is at the DOD level, not at the VA level. And I think that jointly we can really focus on that. And I'd be happy to lend whatever I can to help make changes at the Department of Defense. With that, we'll go ahead and let you see us out. Go ahead and say what you'd like to say. You got 30 seconds.
Great. Yeah, I think I really appreciate you guys. I thought you were fair and forthright with me. I hope you're equally fair and forthright in the clips and super cuts and all the stuff you're going to do. This is the book that kind of outlines this stuff. I've asked these guys to link the Amazon on it. It lays this out, has a bunch of footnotes. General Mattis says it's a must read for those committed to caring for our veterans. A couple former VA secretaries wrote blurbs about it. I don't make any money on it. I literally make like 25 cents a book because Jeff Bezos takes it all. But that's the magnum opus. That's the full argument. And what you heard here today was a small subset of it.
Yeah. All right. And Jason, take us away with your infamous.
Right. Yeah. Hey, thank everybody for watching. We really do appreciate you very much. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.